Chapter 1406. On Frost Island, in front of a formation disk of Jinling sect's great protective formation, Yuan Zhan had made up his mind a long time ago, but he still looked like he was struggling when he reached the formation disk. However, he couldn't stop himself right now. In the end, a hint of ruthlessness flashed across his face, and he pressed his hands downwards. The entire formation disk immediately shattered, and the spirit stones embedded in it were blown away from time to time. The spirit energy of a spirit vein beneath the formation disk also leaked out. Unknowingly, a hole had appeared in the Great Shinling Defense Formation. At this time, Yuan Zhan, who had been struggling a moment ago, calmed down. A mirror that looked like it was modeled with copper appeared in his hand, and he waved it towards the dark sea outside of Frost Island. Although the light on the surface of the mirror was dark, it seemed to have extremely strong penetrative power. After the light flashed a few times, Yuan Zhan finally let out a sigh of relief and put the mirror away. You still took this step after all. Yuan Zhan was shocked. Light flashed in his hand, and he turned around. Two treasures, one in front of him to protect him, and the other ready to be used. However, after seeing the person who came, Yuan Zhan actually let out a sigh of relief and said, "Senior brother is really scary. However, the situation now is like an arrow on a bow that has no choice but to be released. That Lu Tianping and Lu Tianling are in cahoots with each other, trying to get rid of the dissidents and take charge of the sect alone. This time, they even sent all the second-generation cultivators who had advanced to the middle Dharma stage to the treasure ship. Their wild ambitions are clear. What you and I are doing now is just to find a way out for ourselves." Xin Xiang seemed to subconsciously take 2 steps forward while thinking. He sighed and said, "What you said does make sense. Sect leader and junior brother Lu's methods are indeed a little too violent. Back then, you greatly offended junior brother Lu, and even caused your uncle to be humiliated by junior brother Lu many times. In the future, you will definitely be suppressed by them." Xin Xiang walked forward while thinking. Yuan Zhan agreed. "It's not just suppression. That Lu Tianping and I have been enemies for a long time." At this time, Xin Xiang had already stopped 3 feet in front of Yuan Zhan. He stared at Yuan Zhan and said, "Junior brother, let's not talk about the fact that the sect leader and his disciple have not started suppressing you. All of this is just your baseless speculation. Even if they want to suppress you, it is just a conflict within the sect. Why are you inviting the wolf into the house?" Yuan Zhan was shocked. Only now did he realize that the distance between them seemed to be too close. His figure flashed with the intention of retreating. However, Xin Xiang's sigh sounded out by his ear. Alas, it's too late. Yuan Zhan's retreat was extremely fast, but the Xin Xiang in front of him was not pulled away. Instead, it was right in front of him, getting closer and closer. It was so close that Yuan Zhan didn't have time to summon his protective magic treasure. Xin Xiang's palm landed on Yuan Zhan's chest. Yuan Zhan's eyes widened, and fresh blood gushed out of his mouth like a fountain. His mouth gurgled, and it took him a while to recover. You are already a Dharma adept? Why? Don't forget, you and Uncle Tianchong also contributed a lot to all of this." Xin Xiang sighed, and his face showed a trace of sorrow. He said, "Junior brother, you still can't see it. This is just a plot against you and the person behind you. Although our sect has always been at odds with the sect leader, we are not crazy enough to betray the sect. Furthermore, although the sect leader is domineering, he is also fair. The so-called discord is just between the previous generation. What does it have to do with us? Junior brother Lu is a genius and a key figure in the rise of our sect. After discovering that your actions were inappropriate, we promised that if you turned back, we would let bygones be bygones. Who would have thought that not only would you fall into this trap, but you would also fall deeper and deeper? You and I were once good friends, and because I could not bear for you to leave the sect, I have hinted to you many times. Have you ever regretted your actions?" Ha ha ha. Yuan Zhan suddenly laughed shrilly, and like a malicious spirit, he said coldly, "A bunch of hypocrites. What repentance, what hints? It is just a mask you use to cover up your hypocrisy. Me leading a wolf into the house is poisonous. You clearly had the chance to stop me, but you did nothing to save me. Isn't that poisonous? fighting poison with poison. You are even more poisonous. Yuan Zhan spat out large mouthfuls of blood due to the shattering of the core space. However, at this time, he knew that he was going to die. Instead, he wanted to spit out everything in his heart so that he could die in peace. Xian Xiang shook his head, not wanting to argue with someone who was about to die. However, he heard Yuan Zhan laugh coldly. So what if you know about this? In the face of absolute power, even Lu Tianping may not be able to turn the tide. Moreover, he has already entered the Sea of Storms with the ship. How can he rush back in time? Who said he won't come back? Xian Xiang interrupted him coldly. At this time, Yuan Zhan's mind shook. He wiped away the blood at the corner of his mouth and said, "Impossible. Blue Sea Sect has already sent news that Lu Tianping has already entered the Sea of Storms with the ship. The Sea of Storms may not be able to trap him." Xian Xiang could see that Yuan Zhan was at the end of his rope, but he still couldn't help but argue. At this time, an enormous tremor came, and a muffled sound resounded through all of Frost Island. Someone had charged in, and Jinling's great defensive formation was instantly destroyed. Old woman Heavenly Snow, die. A low shout seemed to explode in the ears of all the cultivators on Frost Island, and immediately suppressed the commotion caused by the explosion in other parts of Frost Island. It was coming for Jinling. It's coming, it's coming. Life continued to flow out of Yuan Zhan's body. Xian Xiang stood at the side, unmoved. Yuan Zhan's originally collapsed body suddenly sat up, pointed at Yuan Zhan and said, "You will all die." Xian Xiang instinctively kicked out, but found that Yuan Zhan, who was flying in the air, had long since stopped breathing. A series of explosions came from behind Xian Xiang. Xian Xiang's expression changed. This was a sign that the great defensive formation was being broken through. Although Yuan Zhan had destroyed one of the array discs, causing a loophole to appear in the Zhenling sect's defensive array, the fact that the enemy was able to find and destroy the loophole in such a short time proved that the strength of the enemy was far beyond their expectations. Xian Xiang was a formation master himself. Although his attainments in formations could only be considered at the level of an ordinary formation master, his Dharma level cultivation was the highest among all of Jinling's formation masters. Right now, Jinling's great defensive formation on Frost Island could only be unleashed in his hands. Xian Xiang himself was the most crucial person for Jinling to survive the crisis that Frost Island was facing today. He had to protect the formation well. At least, he had to buy enough time. At this time, Tian Xiang actually regretted spending too much time on cultivation. Otherwise, with his talent, even if he couldn't become a formation grandmaster, he would at least be at the level of a great master. It would be easier for him to maintain the operation of the defensive formation. Just as Xian Xiang was using all his strength to trap the two cultivators who had barged into the formation, he realized that the intruders were actually two great cultivators. What was going on? Wasn't Songhai sect trying to stir up trouble this time? Could it be that Dao Sheng Laozu had also joined in? Xian Xiang panicked for no reason. This great defensive formation had been changed into a trapping formation, and the key to opening it was the formation disc that Yuan Zhan had destroyed. But if there were two great formations inside, this trapping formation wouldn't be of much use. At this time, Tian Shui Laozu's angry roar suddenly exploded in the sky. That bastard has eaten the guts of a leopard. How dare he come to Frost Island and behave atrociously? Before he arrived, a folding fan had already shot out from the void. With a swish, the folding fan opened and a wave of ice and snow fell towards the two people in the trapping formation. Haha, the wind and snow immortals were so powerful back then. Now that the blizzard has lost its wind, how much of its power is left? Before the East Pole Great Ancestor could finish his words, a violent snowstorm swept up in midair, sweeping towards the East Pole Great Ancestor. East Pole Laozu cried out in shock. The black fog surrounding his body was almost blown away. His entire body flew back several meters before he managed to dodge Tian Shui Laozu's unexpected attack. His entire body shook violently along with the black fog around him. It was obvious that he was quite frightened. The blizzard flashed past. Tian Shui Laozu held the snow fan in one hand and the wind fan in the other. She looked coldly at East Pole Laozu, who had revealed more than half of his body. She said in a deep voice, "You're not East Pole. Could it be that you've taken over his body? But how did you survive the second lightning tribulation?" East Pole Laozu didn't answer Tian Shui Laozu's question. Instead, he chuckled and said, "Tian Fan is already dead. The wind and rain dual fans can no longer be combined. Just now, I, the old man, was indeed shocked." At the side, Wu Jia Laozu's expression was gloomy. Previously, East Pole Laozu was able to jump out and fight with Tian Shui Laozu was because Wu Jia Laozu had blocked the sealing force of the formation, creating an opportunity for East Pole Laozu. Who would have thought that a great cultivator would be shocked by a dead person? Following which, he was forced back into the formation. Furthermore, he was forced back into it by a mid-Dharma plane cultivator. Brother East Pole, there's no point in talking so much. Don't let them stall for time. The dissatisfaction in Wu Jia Laozu's words couldn't be more obvious. East Pole Laozu's face flashed with a trace of awkwardness. Following which, he shouted, "Old Lady Tian Shui, this day next year will be your death anniversary." As soon as he finished speaking, East Pole Laozu leaped up once again. Wu Jia Laozu instantly opened up the formation's confinement. East Pole Laozu headed straight for Tian Shui Laozu. No matter how much East Pole had advanced to the late Dharma plane, his cultivation was still much higher than Tian Shui Laozu. Previously, Tian Shui Laozu had used the wind-snow dual fan to defeat East Pole Laozu. However, she was ultimately unable to unleash the full power of the wind-snow dual fan. This time, she was the one being suppressed by East Pole Laozu. With just a single strike, he was able to break Tian Shui Laozu's spiritual power. However, before East Pole Laozu could completely escape from the encirclement, a seven-colored radiance flickered in midair. A seven-colored firebird suddenly flew out from the radiance and swooped down towards East Pole Laozu's head. It was another unexpected attack. When East Pole Laozu used all his strength to force Tian Shui Laozu to retreat, Mei Tianqin used the spiritual power that she comprehended from the Luan Daoist life plume to force East Pole Laozu back into the formation. This time, even East Pole Laozu felt somewhat embarrassed. However, he didn't notice that Wu Jia Laozu, who was beside him, was currently looking at Mei Tianqin, who was hovering above the formation together with Tian Shui Laozu. Mei Tianqin was prepared to take action at any moment. Previously, when Mei Tianqin suddenly made her move, she had the advantage of a sneak attack. Since East Pole Laozu's attention wasn't on Mei Tianqin, he might not have sensed it. However, Wu Jia Laozu, who was at the side, could clearly feel the threat from Mei Tianqin the moment she made her move. Just when East Pole Laozu was about to rush out again, Wu Jia Laozu pulled him back and said, "Don't get entangled too much. Let's work together to break the formation first." East Pole Laozu was so angry that he couldn't think straight. Now that he was stopped by Wu Jia Laozu, he immediately regained his composure. The black fog around him thickened again, concealing his figure. He no longer tried to rush out of the formation. Instead, he focused on breaking the formation with brute force. Once the formation was broken, Jinling would no longer have a place to defend on Frost Island. When the remaining Jinling cultivators faced the two grand cultivators, they could only escape or be killed. No matter which one it was, Jinling's spiritual stone mine on Frost Island would no longer be safe. Boom, boom, boom. The two grand cultivators attacked 3 times in a row. Another 2 of the 6 formation plates that Tian Xiang Laozu tried his best to maintain were broken. As long as one more formation plate was broken, Jinling's great formation on Frost Island would no longer need to operate. Tian Shui and Tianqin naturally knew the ins and outs of their own formation. Seeing that the two grand cultivators were no longer trying to break the formation and were instead trying to break it, they immediately knew that the situation was bad. They had no choice but to try and stop East Pole and Wu Jia. However, after losing the support of the formation, the two of them were powerless against the two grand cultivators. Even though the two of them tried their best, they still couldn't stop the two grand cultivators. Once the formation was broken, Jinling would definitely face the merciless slaughter of the two grand cultivators. Crack! Another formation plate finally couldn't withstand the formation-breaking power of the two grand cultivators and shattered. However, as this formation plate shattered, the entire Jinling's protective formation began to collapse. Tian Xiang's expression immediately changed. Without the concealment of the formation, his figure was immediately exposed to the two grand cultivators. This time, let's see where you can escape to. Wu Jialaozu laughed sinisterly as he grabbed towards Mei Tianqin, restraining her. After that, he clenched his right fist and hammered down on her chest. Seeing that Mei Tianqin wouldn't die, she would be heavily injured. However, Tian Shuelaozu, who was trying her best to self-destruct under East Pole Laozu's pursuit, suddenly drifted to the side. In that instant, Wu Jialaozu's fist landed right on Tian Shuelaozu's chest. What spurted out from Tian Shuelaozu's mouth wasn't fresh blood. Instead, it was a sparkling red blood light. "Senior uncle!" Mei Tianqin cried out in shock. She hurriedly pounced towards the unconscious Tian Shuelaozu. Wu Jialaozu laughed. "There's no need to throw away your life. We have to settle this." "That's right. We have to settle this." Just as Wu Jialaozu's words landed, a voice echoed in his ears. "Who?" Wu Jialaozu was startled. Suddenly, 9 loud bell chimes resounded in the sky. The two grand cultivators felt a sharp pain in their heads. After that, they regained their senses. However, the person they didn't expect, the person they were even more unwilling to face, was already standing in front of them. Chapter 1407. Like the Milky Way falling down, the tsunami set off huge waves that were dozens of feet high. Even the tallest hill on Huangli Island would be engulfed by these huge waves. As the huge waves crashed down, the entire Huangli Island was immediately submerged by the surging seawater. However, as the seawater slowly receded, Huangli Island, which was protected by a huge formation, reappeared on the surface of the sea. Then, it was engulfed by the second huge wave and reappeared again. After several waves, Huangli Island's island guarding formation still firmly protected the entire island. However, from the increasingly violent shaking of the island guarding formation and the gradually fading color of the island guarding formation, it was obviously having a hard time resisting the impact of these huge waves. After all, the continuous impact of the tsunami-like waves was the supreme magical power of Dongyi Laozu, with the help of the Sea Transfer Order. Kongjing Laozu said with a hint of surprise, "Huangli Island is really impregnable under Lu Tianping's management over the years. Even under the full attack of a great cultivator, it can still be defended so tightly." The primordial giant crocodile great cultivator snorted and said, "Lu Tianping is not on Huangli Island all year round. Except for a few battles when Huangli Island was first occupied, it can be said that Huangli Island has always been managed by his Taoist companion. However, the achievement today is also because of Lu Tianping's rapid rise." Kongjing Demon King said in surprise, "Fellow Taoist, you are very clear about the details of Huangli Island." The great cultivator snorted coldly with a trace of displeasure on his face. The reason why he was so clear about Huangli Island was that the primordial giant crocodile's demon cultivator had suffered a great loss outside Huangli Island. Kongjing Demon King's words might be unintentional, but in his ears, it seemed to be a deliberate mockery. Dongyi alone can't break the Huangli Island's guarding formation. Since he has already made his move, we don't have to stay idle anymore. Brother Huangli Island is indeed well informed. As the saying goes, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. Please enlighten me. Lu Tianping's path companion is a master of formations. There are at least 2 mid-Dharma adepts and 2 or 3 early Dharma adepts on the island. In addition, there are many core forging adepts on the island. With the power of the formations, they can definitely defend against an attack from a grand adept. Kongjing Demon King nodded and said, "There are 2 mid-Dharma adepts?" Huangli Island was indeed very powerful, but who was the mid-Dharma adept guarding Huangli Island? Other than Tian Shui and the heavily injured Xiang Lu, didn't Jinling's mid-Dharma adepts all leave on the treasured ship? Could it be Mei Tianqin? It's not Mei Tianqin. It seems to be an expert that Lu Tianping recruited from the Central Plains. Kongjing Laozu sighed and said, "Jinling's strength has indeed improved rapidly these few years. There are actually experts from the Central Plains who are willing to follow a cultivator from the North Sea. If that's the case, Dongyi, who has just advanced to the late Dharma stage, might even be at a disadvantage on Huangli Island. Looks like we really have to make our move. Huangli Island has stolen a lot of training resources from us demons all these years. Tell our men to get ready. Once we break the guarding formation of Huangli Island, we will rush in. We must not give the Jinling adepts a chance to leave and move their training resources. Since the opportunity is here, we will make a bloodbath on Huangli Island. As soon as the voices of the two great cultivators faded away, a splash suddenly appeared on the surface of the sea a few miles behind them. Kong Jing's expression turned to one of shock as he looked at the distant sea that had already turned into a ball of mist and shouted, "Who's there?" As soon as he finished speaking, a ray of light suddenly passed through the mist and came towards the two grand adepts. There was a commotion behind them. The primordial giant crocodile great adept's face darkened. He stretched out his hand towards the ray of light, but was stopped by Kong Jing. "Brother, it's a cultivator of our race." At this time, the Grand Adept also realized that something was wrong. However, being stopped so easily by Kong Jing still made him feel uncomfortable. He snorted coldly and retracted his hand. Kong Jing smiled slightly and looked at the ray of light that was on the verge of death. His face darkened and he scolded, "Siet Demon King, why are you panicking?" The ray of light landed in front of the two Grand Adepts. A pale-faced Dharma adept of the demon race bowed to the two Grand Adepts in a panic and said, "Dear Laozu, something bad has happened. An assassin has sneaked into our race's formation. We found that Scaled Demon King and Xia Demon King have died in the water tent." "What?" Kong Jing's face changed. These two Demon Kings were early Dharma adepts. They were two of the many Dharma Demon Kings that the deep-sea demon race had sent to Huangli Island. Each of them led 500 demon children, but they were killed so quietly in the water tent. "Didn't you find anything yourself?" The Demon King who came to report the news was also a mid-Dharma adept. He quickly lowered his head and said, "The assassin is very cunning. I'm ashamed. I found some clues, but the assassin retreated easily. I've never been able to find any traces of him." "Useless." Demon King Kong Jing scolded. "I'm a mid-Dharma demon cultivator with 2,000 demon children under my command. 3 of them are early Dharma adepts, and I can even fight a great Dharma adept. How could someone sneak in and kill 2 of them? I don't even know who the opponent is. Could it be that Lu Tianping returned from the Ocean of Storms?" Demon King Xie's face was covered in cold sweat. He could not put up any resistance in front of Kong Jing, who was a grand adept. The Scaled Whale tribe was already the weaker side among the North Sea demon race. Now that 2 of their early Dharma adepts had been killed, it was a huge blow to the Scaled Whale tribe. The battle had not even begun, and they had already lost 2 of their generals. Yet, they did not even know who the killer was. As the leader of the Scaled Whale tribe, Kong Jing was naturally furious. At this time, it was the primordial crocodile great adept who reached out to stop Kong Jing. He said coldly, "My friend, please don't be angry. The old man might have already guessed who it is." "Who is it?" Kong Jing said fiercely. "It should be Zhenling's demon sword, In Tianchu." The great adept said in a low voice, "This person is the disciple of Zhenling's second-generation disciple, the true shadow master of the 3 truths and 4 spirits. He is actually the bastard child of the Ice Dragon tribe and the true shadow master. His assassination techniques are extremely powerful. He was once as famous as Lu Tianping. In the North Sea world, they are known as the One Immortal and One Demon. The Immortal is the North Sea Water Sword Immortal, and the Demon is the Demon Sword, In Tianchu." The great adept paused and said, "Zhenling has already discovered our actions." "So what?" Kong Jing's attention finally shifted from Demon King Xia to Huangli Island. He said coldly, "If Zhenling is really prepared, then he must have set up an ambush and waited for us to walk into it. Now that he has sent an assassin to kill people and disturb us, it proves that Zhenling is powerless. We just need to kill our way into Huangli Island. An assassin who hides and assassinates is not worthy to be seen." Chapter 1408. The Demon Clan had already lost 2 Dharma adepts before they even joined the battle. This was a huge blow to the morale of the Demon Clan adepts. Fortunately, the two Grand Adepts were confident that they could break through the defense of Huangli Island. As long as they could ignite the Demon Clan Adepts' desire to kill, the large amount of training resources on Huangli Island would be enough to boost the morale of the Demon Clan Adepts in the upcoming battle. At this point, Dongyi Laozu had no choice but to personally appear and fight against the Dharma Adepts who were guarding Huangli Island. Even though he had already made sufficient estimates of the defense of Huangli Island as a Grand Adept, when faced with the defense of Huangli Island, he gradually felt a sense of helplessness. This caused Dongyi Laozu to feel a sense of foreboding for no reason. He was blocked by two mid-Dharma adepts. Strictly speaking, these two were not Jinling adepts. More accurately, they were Lu Tianping's retainers and followers. Lu Tianping had followed the treasured ship to Central Plains, but he did not expect to leave these two people behind on Huangli Island. With these two people working together, in addition to a master who was in charge of the protective matrix, they were actually able to block Dongyi Laozu's attack with great composure. Composure. That's right. This sense of foreboding was due to the composure of the Jinling adepts on Huangli Island. In reality, Dongyi Laozu had expected that he would not be able to break through the defense of Huangli Island alone. However, Dongyi Laozu was not the only one behind him. At this time, the huge demonic aura could be said to have covered the entire sky. This was also the reason why Dongyi Laozu had so easily revealed his identity and attacked Huangli Island first. In the face of absolute power, Huangli Island would not be able to escape the fate of destruction. The dead would naturally keep his secret. As for the Demon Clan, before they could block Jinling's subsequent counterattack, they would naturally not expose themselves. By the time the Demon Clan wanted to expose themselves, Jinling would probably be powerless to do anything. The Jinling cultivators on Huangli Island should have been aware of the absolute power of the Demon Clan's encirclement. However, how could the Jinling cultivators remain calm in the face of such a calamity? Even if the two mid-Dharma adepts before him had a strong enough will to face death with equanimity, how could the thousands of adepts stationed on Huangli Island remain calm? The entire Huangli Island was too quiet. This was the source of Dongyi Laozu's unease. Unless Jinling had anticipated this and made sufficient preparations. As he thought of this, Dongyi Laozu's first thought was to immediately inform the Demon Clan adepts behind him who were about to launch an all-out attack. However, Dongyi Laozu forcefully suppressed this thought. At this time, Dongyi Laozu had already shot the arrow, and there was no turning back. If Huangli Island was really a huge trap, he could only bite the bullet and jump in. Not only would he jump in himself, he would also drag the Demon Clan down with him. The sea transferring token floated above Dongyi Laozu's head. Vaguely, there seemed to be a huge dragon whale swimming in the light of the sea transferring token. As the dragon whale moved, the water around Huangli Island began to rise again, gradually forming a tsunami, preparing for the next attack. Kong Jing Laozu looked at the sea transferring token above Dongyi Laozu's head, and his eyes shone with an inexplicable light. Especially when he saw the great power of the dragon whale spirit under the control of Dongyi Laozu's vast sea technique. Kong Jing Laozu's expression became even more vicious. This sea transferring token should have been left by vast sea Laozu to the Dragon Whale clan. Only in the hands of the Dragon Whale clan could the full power of this spiritual treasure be unleashed. It's a pity that the vast sea bell and the cloud sail are now in Jinling's hands. Otherwise, with the three treasures of the vast sea, the Dragon Whale clan would have been the overlord of the North Sea Demon clan. How would they have been suppressed by an outsider like the primordial crocodile in the deep sea demon region? Kong Jing Laozu was about to take the opportunity to vent his anger on Jinling of Huangli Island. At the same time, the other primordial crocodile cultivator also made his move. With the combined might of the three great cultivators, Huangli Island would fall in an instant. In front of a cave abode in the back mountain of Mystic Spirit Island, a streak of light landed. Feng Shutao hurried over and saw Lin Shuqing standing in front of the cave abode. He asked anxiously, "Junior brother Lin, where is teacher?" Lin Shuqing answered, "Uncle Master is still meditating. How can teacher still be so relaxed at a time like this? No, time is of the essence now. Xinling's sect cannot fall behind. Otherwise, all the benefits will be snatched away by the vast sea sect. We won't even have a chance to eat the leftovers. Feng Shutao said anxiously as he tried to barge into the cave abode. Lin Shuqing tried to stop him but was pulled away by Feng Shutao. Get out of the way. If anything happens, the old man will bear the consequences alone. Lin Shuqing sighed helplessly as he watched his hot-tempered senior walk into the cave abode. After some thought, he turned around and followed Feng Shutaoing. Dao Shang Laozu looked at Feng Shutao in disappointment. All these years, the younger generation of Xianling sect had fallen into an awkward situation. Out of the original 5 Dharma adepts of the first generation, only he, Dao Yin, and Dao Li were left. Feng Shutao, whom the second generation had high hopes for, took a shortcut after reaching the mid-Dharma stage. It would be difficult for him to improve in the future. Instead, Lin Shuqing caught up and had already passed his first Thunder trial and reached the mid-Dharma stage. It was a pity that Lin Shuqing's talent was not as good as Feng Shutao's. The fact that he was able to reach the mid-Dharma stage was already a testament to his talent. Although the growth of the second generation was not as good as expected, at least Lin Shuqing would be able to maintain the legacy of Xianling sect. As for Feng Shutao, whom they had high hopes for, after losing to Jiang Tianlin, Lu Tianling, Mei Tianqin, and the others, his will had long been worn down. Although he was clamoring about how to deal with Zhenling, he looked fierce on the outside but was actually weak on the inside. After all, he had lost the courage to fight Zhenling head-on and only had the instinct to take advantage of the situation. If Xianling sect was handed over to him, it would be difficult for him to lead the sect in the future. There was Ouyang Weijian among the third generation of cultivators, and there were 2 others who had reached the Dharma stage. However, their talent was limited. To be able to form a Dharma stage had already used up a lot of the sect's resources. In the future, if there was no great opportunity, it would be difficult for them to achieve anything. If it was in the past, Dao Shang Laozu would have praised Zhenling for having a successor. However, when he saw that there were 3 generations of cultivators in Zhenling, although Ouyang Weijian was strong, it would be difficult for him to do it alone. Moreover, no matter how strong Ouyang Weijian was, he could not be compared to Lu Tianping and Yin Tianchu. Feng Shutao complained bitterly and begged his teacher to help, but he saw that Dao Sheng Laozu was sitting at the top and seemed to be distracted, as if he was not listening to what Feng Shutao was saying. The anxiety on his face showed again, but Lin Shuqing, who was standing behind him, did not move. Feng Shutao had no choice but to look to Dao Yin Laozu for help. Dao Yin Laozu pondered for a while and finally said, "Senior brother, time waits for no one. Although you don't believe that the celestial phenomenon is not prepared, if this celestial phenomenon is really lost, we will miss a good opportunity. In any case, it is reasonable for our sect to beat them when they are down. Do you think that if our sect does not make a move, Zhenling will not attack our sect in the future? Xianling and Zhenling have been entangled for thousands of years, and the entanglement between them is much deeper than that between the Songhai sect and Zhenling." Dao Sheng Laozu let out a long sigh and said, "The celestial phenomenon has always been astute and astute. In terms of understanding of the North Sea, the old man is the best. Well, since you all think that this is an opportunity, then the old man will see if this celestial phenomenon will ruin his hundreds of years of planning." Feng Shutao was overjoyed and hurriedly said, "No, it won't. I have received the latest news that the Songhai sect not only has the support of the Taishan sect of the Central Region, but also the demon race has a great practitioner who wants to attack Huangli Island. If you take action, Master, with the 3-pronged attack, Zhenling will definitely not be able to escape." Dao Sheng Laozu's expression changed. He snorted coldly and said, "Inviting a wolf into the house will definitely bite you in the future. Has the Songhai sect reached the point where they will do anything to defeat Zhenling?" Outside Frost Island, Lu Ping's sudden appearance not only shocked the 2 great practitioners, East Pole Laozu and Wujie Laozu, but also the divine senses of Laozu that were patrolling around Frost Island that were stationed there. Obviously, Lu Ping's appearance was too shocking. "This is impossible." A sharp roar came from the mouth of East Pole Laozu, who was surrounded by black fog in the north. "You have already entered the stormy ocean with the treasured ship. How can you escape alone? Why is it impossible? Isn't I right in front of you now?" Lu Ping's casual words made the two great practitioners in front of him and the Dharma power Laozu, who were secretly watching the battle, suck in a breath of cold air. To be able to enter the stormy ocean with one's physical body, it was said that the physical body of a pure yang practitioner who had gone through the third thunder trial could withstand the cutting of the spatial storms in the stormy ocean. But this was only a legend. Other than an old pure yang turtle from the South Sea Tyrant Turtle clan who had done this, there was no other pure yang practitioner who had crossed the stormy ocean with his physical body. Although Lu Ping did not cross the stormy ocean, he was still able to enter and exit freely. But one must not forget that Lu Ping was only a great practitioner at the late Dharma stage, and he had only gone through 2 thunder trials, yet he was able to do this. How strong was his physical body? Could it be stronger than the shell of the tyrant turtle? Lu Ping obviously did not care about the shock in everyone's hearts. Instead, he looked at East Pole Laozu, who was surrounded by black fog in front of him, and said, "Speaking of which, should I address you as Senior East Pole? Or should I call you Wang Shiqing Laozu?" East Pole Laozu was silent for a moment, then said coldly, "Shiqing is dead. Old man East Pole. Possession?" Lu Ping's eyes were filled with curiosity as he said, "I can't believe that after possession, he can still advance his level of practice. Although it is not perfect, it is still a late Dharma stage. But that Wang Shiqing was seriously injured by me, and he did not want to lose his life in my hands. Instead, Senior Laozu took advantage of him. Don't you dare spread rumors, Lu Tianping die." Anyone could hear the anger in East Pole Laozu's voice. Chapter 1409. Lu Ping did not take the Eastern Laozu seriously at all. Although this person was at the late Dharma stage, he was definitely not a great adept who had survived the Second Thunder Tribulation. Lu Ping had been able to injure him severely when he was at the mid-Dharma stage, and now that he had advanced to the late Dharma stage, his strength had increased by many folds. Naturally, Lu Ping did not take him seriously at all. In comparison, Lu Ping treated the other great adept from the Taishan sect, Wujie Laozu, with more respect. Compared to the Eastern Laozu, who had used some secret shortcut to become a great adept, Wujie Laozu could be considered a great practitioner of Central Plains. Disregarding everything else, just the fact that he was able to enter the top 50 of the late Dharma stage during the battle at the Ninshian Tower and gain the right to enter the world of the Way Altar was enough to show how powerful this great adept was. Speaking of which, in the world of the Way Altar, Lu Ping and Wujie Laozu had almost fought face to face once. However, at that time, Lu Ping had been alert and had managed to escape from the encirclement of Wujie Laozu and the others. Even so, Lu Ping knew that Wujie Laozu was probably much stronger than the so-called wind and rain dual whips of the Taishan sect that he had met before. After Lu Ping appeared, although Wujie Laozu could not hide the shock on his face, his eyes did not show the panic that the Eastern Laozu had. While Lu Ping was mocking Eastern Laozu, this Wujie Laozu was frighteningly quiet. His deep gaze was so deep that even Lu Ping could not see through his thoughts. He was like a venomous snake lying in wait. Just as the East Pole Great Ancestor was about to strike out in anger, this Wujie clan ancestor suddenly struck out as well. The power of the skill he unleashed with all his might shocked even Lu Ping. This Wujie clan ancestor was a peak late Dharma stage cultivator. Clearly, the trip to the Way Altar a few years ago had greatly increased the level of this great adept from the Taishan sect. Lu Ping did not care about the Eastern Laozu's attack. He did not even use the spirit treasure in his hand. He simply mobilized the surrounding spirit chi and water vapor to form a water vortex that swallowed the Eastern Laozu's remarkable power. Although the water vortex eventually collapsed, the Eastern Laozu's remarkable power was also dispelled at the same time. In the face of the supreme remarkable power that Wujie Laozu had conjured with the spirit treasure in his hand, although Lu Ping took it seriously, the sword light that Jinling had transformed into cut through the heavens and earth. Any kind of remarkable power would not be able to resist the power of this sword technique and would not be able to escape the fate of being dispelled. And just as the Eastern Laozu's attack was easily dispelled by Lu Ping, he tried to use his remarkable power again. Wujie Laozu's remarkable power was also dispelled by Lu Ping's sword. Before Lu Ping could do anything, the aggressive Wu Jialaozu, the great adept that even Lu Ping feared, suddenly turned and fled like a mouse. This was beyond everyone's expectations. After Lu Ping's sword broke through Wu Jialaozu's remarkable power, the sword of true spirit immediately slashed in the direction where Wu Jialaozu was. Unexpectedly, it slashed empty air. And just as the Eastern Laozu formed a remarkable power with his hands, he suddenly saw Wu Jialaozu shamelessly escape. What was even more despicable was that Wu Jia had clearly treated him as the person who would cover his retreat. Whether it was the grudge between the two sides, or the difficulty of the task, Lu Ping had no reason to abandon the Eastern Laozu to chase after Wu Jialaozu, who had escaped further away. Wu Jia, you despicable brat! The Eastern Laozu cursed angrily. However, when he saw that Lu Ping had really focused his attention on him, East Laozu's heart was filled with panic. Even if he joined forces with Wu Jia, they might not be a match for the person in front of him. What's more, Wu Jia had abandoned him and escaped without any sense of loyalty. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. The Eastern Laozu did not even care that Lu Ping was going to attack him. He couldn't help but curse again, Wu Jia, you despicable brat. This old man will not let you off even if I become a ghost. Wu Jialaozu, who was far away, did not even turn his head. Hearing the Eastern Laozu's curses, he ran even faster. Under such circumstances, anyone would have taken the initiative to attack the Eastern Laozu. However, the Eastern Laozu dodged to the side in a moment of desperation. This dodging was of no use at all. It was completely giving way to Wu Jialaozu. Since you want to abandon me as your scapegoat, why should I cover your retreat? I will make way for you. It had to be said that the Eastern Laozu had lost his mind. At this time, how could Lu Ping abandon him to chase after Wu Jialaozu? It was meaningless whether the Eastern Laozu gave way or not. He was just acting out of spite. However, at the moment when the Eastern Pole gave way, the ugliness in their human nature was fully exposed. However, Lu Ping's next reaction was even more unexpected. Lu Ping actually ignored him and took a step forward. Was he going to chase after the escaping Wu Jialaozu? The Eastern Laozu did not know why Lu Ping would do this, but the feeling of escaping death made him ecstatic. That Lu Tianping actually let him go? The facts proved that Wu Jialaozu was experiencing the ups and downs of his life at this moment. Just as the Eastern Laozu was filled with disbelief and joy, Lu Ping, who had taken a step forward, suddenly turned around and pushed his palm towards the Eastern Laozu. The great ancestor of the East Pole sect felt as if Lu Ping's palm had instantly folded the space in front of him and appeared right in front of him. The tremendous force that came from the palm felt as if the great ancestor of the East Pole sect was drowning in the ocean. The Eastern Laozu instantly felt suffocated. Although he was already struggling with all his might, Lu Ping's palm had enveloped Eastern Laozu from all directions. This feeling of impenetrability made it impossible for him to dodge. He could only use all his might to take on the sudden palm from Lu Ping. Puff. Although the Eastern Laozu had tried his best to resist, at this moment, the Eastern Laozu's body was instantly squeezed, and all the ribs in his chest were broken. Not only did fresh blood spurt out from his mouth, but the countless pores on his body also began to ooze bright red beads of blood. However, the Eastern Laozu was still rejoicing. He rejoiced that he had finally survived Lu Ping's attack. This was because after Lu Ping released that palm, he seemed to be extremely confident in his own strength. He did not attack the Eastern Laozu again, but instead took advantage of the rebound force of the palm to fly forward, chasing after Wu Jialaozu. Lu Tianping was too careless. Although the old man's internal organs were seriously injured by his palm, the old man was still alive. This palm could not take the old man's life, nor could it hurt the old man's cultivation foundation. At most, it would only temporarily affect the old man's ability to unleash his strength. Unleash his strength. The Eastern Laozu's complexion was ashen. Just as Lu Ping's palm was about to hit him, the heavily injured Tian Shui Laozu and Mei Tianqin had already blocked him from the front and back. Around him, the heaven form had already activated the collapsed protective formation at some point in time. Even though it was only a part of it, it was enough to trap the great ancestor of the East Pole sect again. No wonder Lu Ping had only sent him a palm attack before chasing after Wu Jialaozu. He had already predicted that the eastern Laozu would not be able to escape from Zhenling's formation. Wu Jialaozu was also fleeing in panic. Behind him, a ray of light appeared on the surface of the sea and chased after him closely. The distance between the two was constantly shrinking. Cold sweat had even appeared on the tip of Wu Jialaozu's nose. However, although Wu Jialaozu was fleeing in panic, his expression did not show the slightest hint of panic. Instead, his eyes were clearly even more focused at this moment. Wu Jialaozu had a clear grasp of the situation. The moment Lu Ping appeared, he already knew that it would be difficult for him to gain any advantage on Frost Island today. Based on his deep understanding of Lu Ping's strength, even if two great adepts joined forces, it would be wishful thinking for them to escape unscathed from Lu Ping's hands. Unlike most people in the cultivation world who did not care about the rumor that Lu Ping had once killed the Fire Phoenix tribe's leader, Yin Zhuxiao, Wu Jialaozu believed in this rumor. He had once seen with his own eyes how Lu Tianping, who was still a mid-Dharma adept, managed to severely injure the strongest of the 5 great adepts and escape from their encirclement. When he was at the mid-Dharma stage, he already had the strength to easily kill late Dharma adepts. Why would it be impossible for him to kill pure young adepts after he advanced to the late Dharma stage? There might not be only one Xiao Baiyu in this world. That was why after Wu Jialaozu joined forces with East Pole Laozu to unleash such a powerful technique, he did not even have the mood to look at Lu Ping's response. He left East Pole Laozu behind in an extremely humiliating manner and turned to flee by himself. In reality, Wu Jialaozu's response had not been the slightest bit wrong. His attack, which he had used almost all of his strength, had been easily torn apart by Lu Ping like a piece of paper. Following that, Wu Jialaozu had been severely injured and could not even be of any use against Lu Ping. If he had not escaped so quickly, East Pole Laozu would not have been the only one who had been forced back into the Zhenling trap by Lu Ping. A person who could ignore the attacks of other adepts of the same level as him had the ability to completely crush other adepts of the same level. Faced with such an opponent, the guilt that Wu Jialaozu had initially felt for escaping vanished into thin air. If he knew that he was going to die, why would he participate? After all, his own life was the most important. But Wu Jialaozu had already gone to such an extent, and yet he still could not shake off Lu Tianping's pursuit. If he could not escape, death was the only outcome. Wu Jialaozu gritted his teeth, and the Grade 1 Tribulation spiritual treasure in his hand suddenly flew a few miles away. It then drew a semi-arc in the air, and a space tunnel slowly formed. Wu Jialaozu's evasive light had already traversed a few miles in an instant, and he plunged into the space tunnel. Behind him was Lu Ping's evasive light. Using a space divine ability at such a close distance to an opponent, and on top of that, on top of the caster himself, was no less than putting himself in a desperate situation. The only difference was that there was still a chance of survival in a hopeless situation. If Lu Ping caught up with him, he would definitely die. Wu Jialaozu had enough courage to seek survival in the face of death, but he had neglected Lu Ping's determination to kill him. The moment he plunged into the space tunnel, Lu Ping had already caught up. Facing the space tunnel that was about to close, his majestic divine will flowed into the tunnel without any hesitation. Lu Ping's face instantly turned pale. This was also a crazy risk, but what was even crazier was that a sword light also cut through the void and entered the space tunnel. Then, Lu Ping suddenly stopped in front of the space tunnel. He raised his hands in the air, and the space tunnel that was about to close suddenly stopped. Lu Ping's divine will that had flowed into the space tunnel had all been withdrawn. Then, there was a ripple on the space tunnel, and the sword of true spirit, which was still dripping blood, returned. Lu Ping finally let go of his hands, and the space tunnel immediately closed. Violent spatial fluctuations swept across a radius of a few hundred feet. Several sea birds that flew over did not even have time to scream before they disintegrated in the air. However, they could not hurt Lu Ping at all. What a pity! Chapter 14:10. On the surface of the sea 100 miles away, the void suddenly rippled like the surface of water. Then, Wu Jialaozu, who was dressed in rags, pinched the wound on his left arm tightly with his right hand. His pale face suddenly turned bright red, and he could no longer suppress the dark red hot blood in his mouth. What a powerful Lu Tianping! He can actually control objects through a temporary spatial tunnel created by someone else. This is a remarkable ability that only a true pure young cultivator can have. This thought flashed through his mind, but Wu Jialaozu did not dare to stop. It was only a distance of 100 miles. Based on the spiritual will of Lu Tianping, who was able to charge through the spatial tunnel without fear, it would not take long for him to discover the direction he was escaping in and catch up to him. Ignoring his injuries, Wu Jialaozu raised his head and looked at the surrounding sea. He barely determined his position, and then, using the blood dripping from his severed arm as a guide, he began to use the blood escape secret technique. This secret technique would definitely cause his physical injuries to worsen, but in order to survive, he had no time to care about that. The moment Wu Jialaozu rose into the air, a powerful spiritual will swept towards Wu Jialaozu like a gust of wind. A moment later, the void not far from where Wu Jialaozu had appeared shook again. A spatial crack exploded, and a huge tunnel was torn open. Lu Ping stepped out of it and looked around. He could not help but frown and sigh. What a pity! When Lu Ping returned to Frost Island, the battle there had already calmed down. However, when Lu Ping's spiritual will swept across the entire island, a hint of worry appeared on his face. The light landed outside the ice palace. Tianxiang was already waiting there. Lu Ping opened his mouth and asked, "Senior brother, is East Pole dead?" Tianxiang looked slightly tired. Although East Pole Laozu was a half-baked great cultivator who had been heavily injured by Lu Ping, he was still in existence at the great cultivator level. Even with the combined power of Mei Tianqin, Tian Shuelaozu, and Tianxiang, who was operating the formation, it was still an extremely dangerous battle for Tianxiang to kill him. Tianxiang saw that Lu Ping's expression was not too good, so he nodded and said carefully, "He was burned to ashes by Master Tianqin's fire technique. He can't be more dead." This result was not out of Lu Ping's expectations. After Tianqin Laozu received the recognition of the Luan Daoist life feather, his strength had increased by leaps and bounds. Although he was still a distance away from the peak of the mid-Dharma stage, he was already an extremely powerful existence among cultivators of the same level. If he used the power of the feather, he might be able to escape unscathed from a great cultivator. If that's the case, why is the Blue Sea sect still on Frost Island? In today's battle, Jinling and the Blue Sea sect had completely fallen out. Now that the great cultivator of the Blue Sea sect had been killed, it could be said that they had suffered a great loss. There was naturally no need for the Blue Sea sect's forces to stay on Frost Island. Tianxiang hesitated for a moment and said, "If we completely expel the Blue Sea sect from Frost Island, our sect will occupy nearly half of the Spirit Stone mine on Frost Island. Won't we be retaliated by the various forces in the North Sea?" Lu Ping was slightly stunned and asked in confusion, "Who would dare?" This time, it was Tianxiang's turn to laugh. He had asked a stupid question. Now that Lu Ping had made a strong comeback, and two great cultivators had been killed by him alone, one dead and one heavily injured, who would dare to go against Jinling? This was also why Lu Ping was a little puzzled and dissatisfied. Forget about Tian Shuelaozu, who was experienced and astute. Even Tianqin Laozu, with her shrewdness, should not have thought of this. Tianxiang immediately understood the reason for Lu Ping's uneasy expression. The smile on his face disappeared, and he said, "Senior Grandmaster Tian Shui was heavily injured before. Later on, when she fought with East Pole Laozu, her injuries worsened again. Senior Grandmaster Tianqin has been taking care of her." So that was why. Lu Ping's heart tightened. He hurriedly walked towards the ice palace and said, "Senior brother will temporarily be in charge of the matters on Frost Island. We must try our best to expel or annihilate the Blue Sea sect's cultivators before they leave and destroy the scattered branches they control. If other sects interfere or take advantage of the situation, we will use diplomacy before force. At this time, our sect does not need to be courteous to anyone. Don't worry, junior brother." Tianxiang's expression was joyful. His face flashed with excitement. All along, As the third generation of Jinling cultivators rose, especially those who were close to Lu Ping, not only did their strength increase far beyond their peers, they were also able to take on independent responsibilities. This caused their status in the sect to greatly increase, and they gradually gained the right to speak in the sect. The more important the responsibility, the more cultivation resources they could receive from the sect, and the faster their own strength would increase. Tian Xiang had just entered the manifestation realm not long ago and needed to quickly increase his strength. Naturally, he hoped to receive more cultivation resources. Originally, he was worried that because of the enmity between his teacher's faction and the sect leader's faction, he would be suppressed by the increasingly powerful sect leader's faction. He did not expect that Lu Ping would so easily hand over the matter of reorganizing the chaotic situation on Frost Island to him. Even though this was only a temporary opportunity, and more like a forced choice, the fact that Lu Ping gave this opportunity to him had already expressed his intentions clearly. Lu Ping had just walked into the ice palace when he saw Tianchong Laozu hurriedly walking out. Seeing Lu Ping, Tianchong Laozu was also surprised, but immediately said happily, "Nephew Lu, you're back? Did the great cultivator of the Taishin sect catch up?" In the previous battle, because they had to guard against the spying of other sects on Frost Island, Tianchong Laozu had not participated in the battle. However, Lu Ping knew that he had been there the whole time. He just did not show up as a backup. Lu Ping shook his head and said regretfully, "That person escaped. His strength is a bit unexpected, but he did not have it easy either. Forcefully opening up a space secret technique must have seriously injured him, and his arm was cut in half by me." Lu Ping paused. Seeing that Tianchong Laozu was in a hurry, he asked casually, "Senior uncle, where are you going? How is senior granduncle's injury?" Tianchong Laozu said, "Senior uncle's injury is not light. Junior sister Tianqin is helping to suppress it. Nephew Lu, you came just in time. Because senior uncle was seriously injured, we forgot to deal with the forces of the Azure Sea sect on Frost Island in the panic. This time, since the two sides have fallen out, our sect will naturally not be polite to the Azure Sea sect." Lu Ping smiled. "Don't worry, senior uncle. Senior brother Tianxiang has already gone with the disciples of the sect. The place where the Azure Sea sect is stationed should have received the news by now. It will definitely be a mess. Senior brother alone is enough to deal with the situation." Tianchong Laozu's expression was joyful. He knew that this was Lu Ping's intention. With a hint of gratitude, he said, "Then thank you very much, junior nephew." "What are you saying, senior uncle?" Lu Ping hurriedly waved his hand. "Senior brother Tianxiang is enough to deal with the current situation. Disciples should go and check on senior granduncle's injury first." Tianchong Laozu nodded with a smile. "With you here and two great grandmasters working together, senior uncle's injury should be under control. However, the old man should still keep an eye on that kid. After all, it is the first time he is in control of such a situation. It is inevitable that there will be some mistakes. The old man can also help him secretly check for any mistakes." Lu Ping smiled. After bidding farewell to Tianchong Laozu, he came to Tian Shui Laozu's secret cultivation room. He saw Tianqin Laozu looking at Tian Shui Laozu, who was cultivating in front of him with a worried expression. Tian Shui Laozu's pale face would occasionally turn abnormally bright red. There was a pool of blood on the ground in front of him that was turning into red ice. When Tianqin Laozu saw Lu Ping returning, he signaled him not to disturb Tian Shui Laozu's cultivation. The two of them then walked out of the secret cultivation room. "Senior uncle, how is senior granduncle's injury?" Mei Tianqin's expression was very unsightly. "Her injury is much more serious than I imagined. I didn't expect senior uncle to have so many hidden injuries on her body. This time, all of them were triggered, which might greatly affect her lifespan. In addition, after senior uncle Tian Fan died, she became disheartened and lived alone on the Frost Island. After this injury, she no longer has much will to live. Even if she survives this, I'm afraid she won't have many years left to live." Lu Ping was startled. Hidden injuries? How could there be hidden injuries? When did she get them? Mei Tianqin's expression turned gloomy. They were left behind after hundreds of years of fighting for the sect. Lu Ping's expression turned cold, and he said coldly, "Daosheng Laozu? Before Tian Xiang Laozu advanced to the late Dharma stage, the reason why Zhenling was able to fight against Xianling sect in the North Sea was because of Tian Fan and Tian Shui Laozu's secret combined attack. It could be said that before Tian Xiang advanced to the late Dharma stage, Zhenling's true pillars were actually the two of them. However, although the two Laozu could fight against Dao Sheng Laozu together, they were still at a disadvantage in terms of strength. The two had fought several times, and although Dao Sheng Laozu could not defeat the two of them at once, he did his best to leave many hidden injuries on the two of them. In the beginning, the two senior uncles probably did not realize it, or even if they did, they would not be able to take care of it. However, in the long run, these internal injuries would accumulate and eventually lead to a huge problem. Tian Shui and Tian Fan were considered strong amongst the mid-Dharma adepts, but they had never been able to advance to the late Dharma stage. The biggest reason for this was probably due to the subtle influence of these internal injuries. In the southern part of the North Sea, after Dao Sheng Laozu decided to intervene in the dispute between the Songhai sect and Jinling, the whole Xianling sect quickly moved under the leadership of the excited Feng Shutao. There were Dharma adepts who led the team, and they flew in different directions. Just as Xianling sect began to move, Dao Sheng Laozu had already left Xianling Island and was heading towards Tianling Mountain alone. Whether Xianling sect succeeded or not, Tian Xiang Laozu, who was guarding Tianling Mountain, was his target. However, not long after Dao Sheng Laozu left Xianling Island, he had to stop in mid-air. Just a few hundred feet away from Dao Sheng Laozu, Tian Xiang Laozu stepped out of the void and smiled. Dao Sheng Laozu, how have you been? Chapter 14:11. Unlike Dongji Laozu, who had used some unknown method to reach the late Dharma stage, Dongyi Laozu was a true grand adept. However, judging from the aura around Dongyi Laozu, there was still a huge gap between him and the two demon kings. Dongyi Laozu's advancement to the late Dharma stage was obviously a trick. However, compared to Dongji Laozu's late Dharma stage, the pure yang aura around Dongyi Laozu's body could not be faked. It was clear that he had seen all 9 strikes of the second thunder calamity. However, Sixth Brother Lei and Green Fox, who had already advanced to the mid-Dharma stage, were able to block Dongyi Laozu's sneak attack with the help of the protective shield of the island. Seeing that Dongyi Laozu's attacks were not successful, and that there was another Dharma adept assassin at the back of the demon army, with 2 Dharma adepts successively falling to Yin Tianchu's sword, the 2 grand adepts of the demon race could not hold themselves back any longer. The 3 grand adepts joined forces to attack Huangli Island. Even if Black Fox, with the help of Lu Ping, successfully became Jinling's 3rd formation grandmaster after completing the Inferno formation on Scarlet Mist Island, she would not be able to stop the protective shield of Huangli Island from being broken in one fell swoop. The demonic clan cultivators who had been waiting outside the protective array on Huangli Island all leapt into the air the moment a huge passageway was created. 2 mid-Dharma stage demonic clan cultivators led the way, followed by 4 early Dharma stage demonic clan cultivators. Behind them were hundreds of core forging stage demonic clan cultivators, all of whom charged into the passageway without a care in the world. Huangli Island is finished. Due to the fact that the formation had been broken, the 3 great cultivators did not immediately barge into Huangli Island. However, the great cultivator of the primordial giant crocodile clan curled his lips as he watched the monster race cultivators swarming in. However, before he could finish his words, he saw a scene that left him in disbelief. Be careful. Demon Monarch Kong Jing had already noticed that something was amiss, but his warning was too late. The demon clan cultivators that swarmed in were like a flood that hit a dam. After a loud bang, they were immediately smashed into pieces and then scattered in all directions. The 2 mid-Dharma beastly cultivators who were in the lead were suddenly sent flying, knocking over dozens of beastly cultivators behind them. Even the 2 late core forging beastly cultivators who were the first to be hit were smashed into meat patties in midair. They were as dead as they could be. The 2 mid-Dharma beastly cultivators who had been thrown into the air also splattered blood in midair. After 2 Dharma beastly cultivators who had rushed over to help them caught them with great difficulty, they had already completely fainted. In the face of such a shocking change, the Monster Clan cultivators who were about to swarm ashore all retreated in horror, but they were squeezed together with the Monster Clan cultivators behind them. Right at this moment, two majestic auras suddenly erupted from Huangli Island. A long sword made of pure flames abruptly burst out from the opening in the defensive formation. Immediately after, a loud and clear eagle cry rang out from Huangli Island. The monster clan cultivators who had originally been in a momentary state of chaos outside the opening in the array formation seemed to have been greatly stimulated by the eagle's cry. They even ignored the flaming sword light. "How dare you? How dare you, scoundrel!" At this time, the two great demon monarchs finally reacted and in time to block it. However, just as the two great demon monarchs were about to block it, the flaming sword suddenly exploded into sparks that filled the sky. Each spark then turned into a small, sharp sword that sprinkled toward the chaotic monster clan cultivators. The two great demon monarchs had already tried their best to block it, but in the face of the fire needles that filled the sky, they could not take care of all the monster clan cultivators. A series of painful cries sounded, and in the end, there were still more than 10 monster clan cultivators who could not avoid the fire needles. The two great demon monarchs looked at the more than 10 monster clan cultivators who had been pierced by the fire needles, only to see that these monster clan cultivators had suddenly turned red like cooked prawns. Demon King Kong Jing seemed to have thought of something and shouted, "Quickly go into the sea." However, his reminder was too late. Whoosh! One after another, flames suddenly emerged from the bodies of more than 10 monster clan cultivators who had been pierced by the fire needles. The monster clan cultivators screamed in pain as they fell into the sea. However, ordinary seawater could not extinguish the flames on their bodies at all. More than 10 monster clan cultivators were burned to ashes from the inside out in front of thousands of monster clan cultivators. The monster clan cultivators had not even attacked Huangli Island, but they had already paid a heavy price. 2 early Dharma adepts had fallen, and 2 mid-Dharma adepts had been seriously injured. In addition, there were more than 10 core forging monster clan cultivators who had been killed or injured. Such a loss made the two great demon monarchs' eyes pop out of their sockets. At some unknown point in time, Patriarch Dongi had already stopped attacking. He stood beside the two great cultivators of the demon race. "May I ask which two great sorcery friends on the island helped Xinling? Two great demon monarchs actually dared to attack a low-level cultivator of our own race. The North Sea Monster Clan will remember such a generous gift. We will definitely repay you in the future." Demon King Kong Jing glanced at Dongi Laozu and asked in a sinister manner. It was impossible for Xinling to send out 2 such powerful great demon monarchs for no reason. In that case, the 2 great demon monarchs who had appeared on Huangli Island must have been the reinforcements Xinling had invited. Kiki. A burst of soft laughter could be heard. 2 streaks of light had already risen from Huangli Island and landed in front of the 3 great demon monarchs. The streaks of light dissipated, and Dongi Laozu's expression changed when he saw the 2 great demon monarchs. When Demon King Kong Jing saw Dongi Laozu's expression, he asked in a murderous tone, "Do you know them, fellow Taoist Dongi?" It was hard to tell who this murderous intent was directed at. Dongi Laozu forced himself to maintain a calm expression. He took a deep breath and said, "Xie Tianyang, one of the 6 divine swords of the Purple Sun Palace, and Sang Yu, the Empyrean Walker of the Spirit Beast Taming Sect. Both of them are renowned 3rd-generation cultivators in the cultivation world. They are close friends with Lu Tianping. Purple Sun Palace, Spirit Beast Taming Sect." Even though Demon King Kong Jing and the other great demon monarchs lived deep in the North Sea, they knew of these 2 prestigious sects in Middle-earth. Neither of them was something the North Sea Monster Clan could afford to offend. Yet, Lu Tianping was able to befriend such figures. From the looks of it, Lu Tianping was willing to guard Huangli Island for Xinling. Clearly, their friendship was not ordinary. Demon King Kong Jing laughed dryly and said, "You 2 are not pursuing the pinnacle of cultivation in the prosperous Middle-earth. Instead, you want to meddle in the affairs of the North Sea. Don't you think you are stretching your hands too far?" "Ha." Xie Tianyang sneered and ignored Demon King Kong Jing's question. As the heir of the number 1 sacred ground in Middle-earth, Xie Tianyang's arrogance was as high as his swordsmanship. Although Demon King Kong Jing was a great cultivator of the Demon Clan, Xie Tianyang did not think much of him. Demon King Kong Jing's face flashed with embarrassment, but he held it in. He really did not have the courage to provoke the heir of the Purple Sun Palace. On the other hand, Sang Yu was a mild-tempered person. The spirit beast taming sect had always had a close relationship with the demon clan. She did not instinctively respond to Demon King Kongjing's question and answered with a smile. Since my old friend asked, I had no choice but to come. You two, Jinling has already come up with a better plan today. It is better for you to leave now. Otherwise, you will only cause casualties and be used by others. That will not be good. As Sang Yu spoke, she looked at Dongyi Laozu. Dongyi Laozu's eyelids twitched, but he remained silent. Instead, the great cultivator of the primordial giant crocodile clan suddenly asked Sang Yu, You are Sang Yu. Did your natal beast steal the bloodline of the primordial giant crocodile clan? Sang Yu hid the smile on her face and said in a deep voice, Why? Have you made up your mind to make things difficult for us? It's not that we're making things difficult for the two of you, but the two of you are purposely making things difficult for the North Sea monster race. Do you really think the two of you can stop us from attacking Huangli Island? Kongjing put on a fake smile. At this moment, Xie Tianyang interrupted them with a cold snort. There is no point in talking. Let's fight. With that, the blazing celestial sun sword pierced through the void and appeared in front of Demon King Kongjing. Demon King Kongjing's expression turned bitter. If he had a choice, he would never choose to fight the heir of the Purple Sun Palace. He did not expect Xie Tianyang to take the initiative to find him. In fact, Xie Tianyang's reason for looking for Demon King Kongjing was very simple. Among the three great cultivators in front of him, the leader of the Wyrm Whale clan was the strongest. On the other side, Sang Yu was already fighting the great cultivator of the primordial giant crocodile clan. There were two Dharma beasts around Sang Yu who were helping him fight the great cultivator of the primordial giant crocodile clan under his command. One of them was the primordial giant crocodile that had already advanced to the mid-Dharma stage, while the other one hovered above Sang Yu was a lone eagle with blood-colored feathers. Dongyi Laozu breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that the two sides were fighting again. The sudden appearance of the two great cultivators of Huangli Island had obviously become the biggest variable in this battle. However, the demon race still had the absolute advantage and was still very confident that they could break through Huangli Island. It was just that it was unlikely that they would be able to massacre the entire island as they had planned. Seeing that the gap in the protective array that Kongjing and Laozu had previously broken through was slowly shrinking, Dongyi Laozu moved to stop the gap from closing. However, at this time, the two mid-Dharma adepts on Huangli Island, Qinghu and Lei Di, had already expected Dongyi Laozu to do this. They had long been guarding the gap and were doing their best to stop Kongjing Laozu's attempt. However, the two of them were only mid-Dharma adepts after all. Without the protection of the protective array, facing Dongyi Laozu's attack, it was only a matter of time before they were defeated. Many of the demon race cultivators had once again organized a group of people to try and break through the gap in the protective array. However, they saw that a few hundred feet away from Dongyi Laozu, a blade of light suddenly appeared without any warning and was aimed at Dongyi Laozu's ribs. At the same time, there were a few more flashes of light from Huangli Island. It was Tianyong, Tianling, Tianxian, Tianming, Qinghu, Qinglang, Lu Bai, Lu Hai, and Lu Ling. A total of 9 early Dharma adepts rushed out of Huangli Island at the same time and engaged in a fierce battle with the demon race cultivators that were swarming over. Chapter 14:12. In Tianchu's sudden attack did not seem to be out of Dongyi Laozu's expectations. He flipped the sea diversion order, and an image of a whale's tail flashed through the air, slapping the blade of light away. Although In Tianchu's attack had failed, it had distracted Dongyi Laozu and prevented him from attacking Qinghu and Lei Di with his full strength. After In Tianchu had joined forces with the two of them, he was able to even out the odds on his own side. Under In Tianchu's incisive assassination techniques, Dongyi Laozu was slowly falling into a disadvantageous position. Surrounding the small Huangli Island, there were 5 great adepts, 7 to 8 mid-Dharma adepts, and more than a dozen early Dharma adepts from both the human and demon clans. They were engaged in a battle to the death outside the island. The demon race had originally thought that Huangli Island would be easily breached, but at this moment, it had suddenly become a rock that had lost a few teeth to the demon race. In actuality, after the appearance of two great adepts on Jinling's side, the demon race already knew that the demon race would not be able to achieve their full victory in today's battle. However, the demon race still had the advantage in numbers, and Jinling's side was inevitably weakened by the loss of the treasured ship. The demon race had planned for a long time, and naturally, they were not willing to return empty-handed. Even though the high-level combatants had been barely stopped by Jinling's side, there were still thousands of demon cultivators charging towards Huangli Island. Although Huangli Island was said to have more than 1,000 cultivators, in reality, most of them were low-level blood refining and blood condensation adepts. Moreover, most of them were lone cultivators. The only ones who could be relied on were the 300 to 400 cultivators from Jinling and their affiliated forces, and among them, there were only 20 to 30 core forging adepts. If they were to rely on these people, even if the island's protective array was still intact, how long could they last? However, just as the demonic beast army charged towards Huangli Island, a deafening roar shook the entire region of Huangli Island. The low-level cultivators within the demonic beast army, especially the blood condensation realm demonic beast cultivators who had yet to fully take human form, were all affected by the sound waves. Their true essence became sluggish, and they could no longer maintain their flight speed. From afar, it looked like a pot of dumplings had been thrown into the sea. Top-ranked demon race bloodline. There were inevitably cultivators of the primeval giant crocodile clan or the flood whale clan among the swarming demon clan army. Naturally, they knew that this kind of roar that could arouse the pressure of the bloodline must be made by the demonic cultivators of the top-ranked demon clan bloodline. In the eastern sea region of Huangli Island, which was also the frontline battlefield where the demon race army attacked Huangli Island most aggressively, an oval-shaped island with a circumference of 300 feet slowly rose from the sea. On the surface of the dark and shiny island, seawater was flowing down. Sky-dominating divine turtle. That roar just now came from this thing. This is the sky-hegemonic divine turtle. How can there be a sky-dominating divine turtle in the North Sea? Could it be that the sky-dominating divine turtle clan is also on Jinling's side? Some of the demonic beast cultivators recognized the colossal creature in front of them and cried out in alarm, causing chaos in the demonic beast army once again. However, some of the more alert ones noticed that something was wrong and hurriedly cried out, "No, no, a real sky-dominating divine turtle is probably even bigger than this one. Furthermore, this giant turtle is only at the 9th layer of core forging. Even if it really is a sky-dominating divine turtle clan, we are both top-ranked demon race. Are you saying that my primeval giant crocodile clan is weaker than the sky-dominating divine turtle clan? That's right. My flood whale clan is also a top-ranked demon race. The descendants of Jiao Daoran are not inferior to the sky-dominating divine turtle clan. Let's attack together and tear his turtle shell apart." The appearance of the giant turtle instantly attracted the hatred of many demonic beast cultivators. They knew that the defense of the sky-dominating divine turtle clan was unparalleled in the world. Therefore, hundreds of demonic beast cultivators, led by more than 10 core forging cultivators, rushed toward the giant turtle. Suddenly, a low laughter came from under the sea. The voice belonged to Lu Dague, who had always been honest. Unexpectedly, the laughter sounded so sultry and lascivious, as if it was mocking these demonic beast cultivators for overestimating their own strength and coming to die. Seeing these demonic beast cultivators rushing forward like a swarm of bees, some of them had already cast various magic arts on the giant turtle, but they could not hurt it at all. At this moment, the previous voice came from the bottom of the sea again. Wuling Dao's soldier formation, rise. Within a radius of 1 mile around the giant tortoise, the seawater began to boil like a pot of boiling water. 303 feet long fishes suddenly emerged from the bottom of the sea like flying swords, sealing off the sky and the sea within a radius of 1 mile. At the same time, the hundreds of demon cultivators who had rushed up to try and kill Lu Dague were also trapped by the formation. Lu Dague's deep voice came from the formation again. 5 elements Dao soldier formation, twist. The entire formation that was sealed by the water immediately began to rotate. Wooling fish with silver light, flashing all over their bodies, shuttled back and forth in the sealed seawater. Because of their extremely fast speed, They even dyed the blue seawater with a layer of silver light. Screams rose and fell from the formation, causing many demonic beast cultivators who tried to come to help to stop in fear. The Wuling Fish Dao Soldier Formation was used by Tianxian sect's Wuling Laozu to fight against Mara's army. It was known as the number 1 Dao Soldier Formation in the cultivation world. Unexpectedly, it was used by Jinling outside Huangli Island today. Back then, Lu Ping obtained a few Wuling fish from Tianxian sect's 7th Fan Laozu. After returning to Huangli Island, Lu Dagui was in charge of the reproduction and training of these fish. In 200 years, Lu Dagui had trained 300 Wuling fish Dao soldiers in the late stage of blood condensation. 6 of them had even reached the early stage of core forging. The Dao soldier formation was finally formed. In the first battle today, the 300 Wuling fish Dao soldiers only used half a cup of tea's time to kill more than 100 demonic beast cultivators, including more than a dozen core forging demonic beast cultivators. The world's number 1 Dao soldier formation really lived up to its name, shocking the entire demonic beast race with just one attack. Another deep roar came from the bottom of the sea. The Dao soldier formation of Wuling Yu immediately moved forward. The tumbling formation went against the flow of the demon army. None of the demon cultivators who were swept into the formation survived. At most, they could only leave behind a series of screams of different tones. Lu Dagui commanded the Wuling Fish Dao Soldier Formation to kill from top to bottom in the eastern sea of Huangli Island. More than 500 demonic beast cultivators and more than 30 core forging demonic beast cultivators were swept into the formation. No one could escape from the formation. All the demonic beast cultivators who attacked Huangli Island in the eastern sea were cut in half by the formation. Under the situation where the Dharma adepts were all blocked by Jinling, no demonic beast cultivators dared to fight against the Dao soldier formation. Wherever the formation passed, the demonic beast cultivators all fled. The ferocious power of the Wuling Fish Dao soldier formation was naturally seen by the Dharma adepts of the demonic beast race. However, the Dharma adepts on Jinling's side were like sticky candy, making it impossible for the demonic beast Dharma adepts to fight against the Dao soldier formation. The Dharma adepts of the Wuling Fish Dao soldier formation could naturally see the ferocious power of the Wuling Fish Dao soldier formation. However, the Dharma adepts on Jinling's side were like sticky candy, making it impossible for the demonic beast Dharma adepts to fight against the Dao soldier formation. At the same time, many of the demonic beast cultivators on the island who were originally hesitant about whether to stay or escape suddenly strengthened their confidence to help Jinling. Although Huangli Island was right in front of them, at this moment, in the eyes of the demonic beast cultivators, it was becoming more and more out of reach. At this moment, a ray of light pierced through the void and a wave of space appeared in the void near Huangli Island. A wave of seawater suddenly exploded from the surface of the sea, forming a water screen. Dongi Laozu, who was fighting with Yin Tianchu and the other two, suddenly made a feint. He had already caught the ray of light in his hand. At the same time, the primordial crocodile great cultivator slapped his palm backwards, slapping the lone eagle that swooped down from midair. At the same time, he pinched the air with his thumb and index finger, and a jade scroll was caught in his hand from the turbulent void. On the water screen that had exploded, a few lines of strange characters suddenly appeared and fell into the eyes of Kong Jing Laozu, who was fighting with Xie Tianyang. The expressions of the 3 great cultivators changed almost at the same time. Dongi Laozu was the first to shout, "What are you guys still holding back? If Huangli Island is not destroyed, what's the point of losing soldiers and generals today?" Bullsh *T. Kong Jing Laozu shouted, "Dongi old man, you are so vicious." The primordial crocodile great cultivator leaped out of the battle with Sangyu and said in a low voice, "All the demons, retreat quickly. Today, the demons were tricked by the Blue Sea sect. My friends Zhengling, why don't we stop here today?" The words of the primordial crocodile great cultivator caused many of the demon cultivators to panic. Many of the demons who were attacking Huangli Island were instantly thrown into confusion and did not know what to do. Fortunately, at this time, Jinling had also received a hint from his Dharma Laozu and did not take the opportunity to kill them. However, there were still many casualties among the demon cultivators. Kong Jing Laozu was instantly enraged and shouted, "Why are you still not retreating? Didn't you hear the order?" At this time, only then did the demon cultivators confirm the order they had heard. Temporarily suppressing the confusion in their hearts, the demon army immediately retreated into the sea like the tide. A long howl was heard and Dongi Laozu suddenly exploded. A few spells were launched towards the three mid-Dharma adepts who were surrounding him, while he himself took the opportunity to break through the encirclement of the three. Then, without looking back, he used the conveyance light to cut through the void and fled in the southwest direction. Behind Dongi Laozu, a blade of light chased after his body. With a muffled groan, the blade of light dissipated. Dongi Laozu, who was in the conveyance light, trembled for a while, but he did not stop and disappeared into the horizon. Hearing the two great cultivators of the demon clan plead for peace, Xie Tianyang and Sang Yu both smiled and retreated without saying a word. It was clear that the two of them were only here to help and did not want to interfere with Zhenling's affairs. At this time, Huangli Island Zhenling's side was led by Yin Tianchu. Yin Tianchu guessed that the demon army retreated and Dongi's escape must have been because both sides had received news that Lu Ping had returned to the East Sea. Next, Zhenling would definitely go all out to deal with the Blue Sea sect, so naturally, he would not make enemies everywhere. Thus, he said coldly, "It's good that you stop. I, Zhenling, have never wanted to be enemies with the deep sea demon region." A great battle ended prematurely in the Central Plains, and the demon army retreated. While Zhenling's side also suffered considerable losses in this battle, but after this battle, Zhenling's dominance over the North Sea was almost unshakable. Chapter 14:13. The sea breeze blew gently, and the clouds in the sky rolled back and forth. Dao Shang Laozu and Tian Xiang Laozu sat quietly among the clouds. A pot of fragrant tea was steeped on a wooden table in the middle. Steaming hot steam spread between the two Laozu, concealing their expressions. After a long time, Dao Sheng Laozu let out a long sigh and said, "Old friend, you're still better than me after all." Tian Xiang Laozu smiled. He held the teapot's handle with one hand and pressed the lid with the other. He tipped the teapot over, and light green tea poured into the teacup in front of Dao Sheng Laozu. The aroma of tea immediately filled the air. Tian Xiang Laozu refilled his cup and then made a gesture of invitation to Dao Sheng Laozu. He didn't say anything about Dao Sheng Laozu's words. Dao Sheng Laozu, the #1 cultivator of North Sea, showed a rare hint of hesitation in the face of the fragrant tea in front of him. Then, he picked up the teacup in front of him, took a sip of the hot tea, and put it back on the table. Only then did he look at Tian Xiang Laozu again. Tian Xiang Laozu finally said, "Xinling sect should not participate in the affairs of Songhai sect." Dao Sheng Laozu breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Yes." Tian Xiang Laozu nodded, as if he was praising, but also as if he agreed with Dao Sheng Laozu's attitude. He then said, "After this matter, Songhai sect should know to restrain themselves in North Sea and be punished." Dao Sheng Laozu agreed, "Yes." Tian Xiang Laozu slowly raised his eyes and stared at Dao Sheng Laozu. North Sea's affairs should be settled by the people of North Sea. Outsiders have no right to interfere. Dao Sheng Laozu said without hesitation, "Yes." As for Feng Shudao and Lin Shuqing, Dao Sheng Laozu was finally moved. He couldn't help but say, "Brother Tianxiang, please." Heavenly Phenomenon Laozu raised his hand to stop Dao Sheng from continuing. He said coldly, "Someone has to take responsibility for the mistake. Brother Dao Sheng, you know what I mean. The blood of Zhenling's disciples cannot be shed in vain." Dao Sheng Laozu let out a long sigh and closed his eyes, as if he was making up his mind. As for Celestial Phenomenon Laozu, he didn't say anything. Instead, he calmly picked up his teacup and sipped on his tea. After a long time, Dao Sheng Laozu suddenly opened his eyes and said with difficulty, "As you said, Feng Su Dao will take responsibility for this." Dao Sheng Laozu seemed to have expended a great deal of energy to say these words. The moment he finished, Dao Sheng Laozu seemed to have aged a few decades. Celestial Phenomenon Laozu, seemed to be surprised that Dao Sheng Laozu had mentioned Feng Su Dao's name. However, a hint of vigilance flashed across his eyes. He nodded and said, "All right." A gentle breeze blew by, and the clouds immediately scattered with the wind. The two old men sitting in the clouds had disappeared at some point, leaving only the fragrance of tea that dissipated with the wind. The news that Lu Ping had returned from the stormy ocean immediately caused a stir in the entire North Sea cultivation world, which had been paying attention to the situation at all times. Using the strength of his body to forcefully resist the spatial storms in the ocean of storms and emerge unscathed, this level of cultivation was something that only those pure young patriarchs who had overcome their third lightning tribulation could do. Based on this level of strength, it was very likely that Yin Zhouxiao, the patriarch of the Fire Phoenix clan, had died by his hands. Unscathed? Lu Ping couldn't help but smile bitterly. If he had returned from the stormy ocean unscathed, how could he have let Wujia Laozu escape from him? At the end of the day, the spatial storm in the stormy ocean had still caused considerable damage to Lu Ping's physical body. After that, he had continuously used the pure young magic treasure to rush to the Scarlet Mist Island, which also caused Lu Ping's real vitality to be greatly depleted. That was why Wujia Laozu finally had the chance to escape. Before leaving Frost Island, Lu Ping gave a 30-year longevity pill to Tian Shui Laozu. He also asked Tian Qin Laozu to tell Tian Shui Laozu that Zhenling was at a critical juncture of becoming a large sect. At this time, who knew how many enemies were plotting against Zhenling? Every Dharma plane cultivator could be the key to Zhenling's final victory. He wanted Tian Shui Laozu to pull herself together and not be disheartened. Moreover, there were only 4 cultivators left in the first generation of Zhenling. No matter what, Tian Shui Laozu could not seek death at this time. However, after arriving at Scarlet Mist Island and joining forces with the cultivators stationed on the island to easily chase away the Xianling sect cultivators who were trying to take advantage of the situation, Lu Ping received a grievous news from Tianlian, who had rushed over from Tianling Mountain to support him. Not long after the treasured ship entered the stormy ocean, which was around the time Lu Ping arrived at Frost Island, Tian Jiang Laozu finally died of old age and passed away in the weapon forging hall. The remaining 4 first-generation cultivators of Zhenling had lost another one. Feng Shutao was fleeing. The panic and fear on his face had not disappeared since he escaped from Scarlet Mist Island. How well did Zhenling hide? How many Dharma plane cultivators did they have in the dark that no one had discovered? Thinking back to the naive young cultivator he had met on Scarlet Mist Island, Feng Shutao could not help but feel a chill run down his spine. This young mid-Dharma adept was obviously someone who had been hidden away by the Zhenling sect and had only focused on his training. He knew nothing about the ways of the world, but his level of training was surprisingly high. Feng Shutao had been at the mid-Dharma stage for more than 100 years, but he was still unable to gain the upper hand against this young Dharma adept. If not for the fact that this young adept was so inexperienced and that Feng Shutao was so sly and cunning, Feng Shutao would have long since been defeated by this young Dharma adept. However, this was not what scared Feng Shutao. What really shocked him was that just when Xianling sect had failed to take advantage of the situation on Scarlet Mist Island, Lu Tianping had suddenly appeared on Scarlet Mist Island. This should not have happened. Didn't this person enter the stormy ocean with the ship? How could this be true? Although Feng Shutao hoped that this was not true, the moment Lu Tianping attacked, Feng Shutao's last shred of hope was shattered. Without another word, he abandoned the Xianling sect disciples and turned to run. What made Feng Shutao feel a sense of relief was that Lu Tianping did not chase after him personally. However, what made him extremely angry was that the mid-Dharma adept who had been fighting with him previously had caught up with him from behind, and his speed was not slow at all. After Luan Yu had received the complete inheritance of the Wood Phoenix tribe, his level of practice had improved by leaps and bounds. This was because, although Luan Yu was under the protection of Yin Wuzhu Laozu, he was still a descendant of the Wood Phoenix tribe. He had never dared to travel alone, even if he was in the territory of the Fire Phoenix tribe. Therefore, he could only spend most of his time in seclusion. Although he knew that even if he became a great medium, there would still be people who would want to take advantage of him, at least he understood that the higher his level of practice, the more likely it was that he would be safe. After returning to the North Sea, his good friend Lu Ping found him a place where he could relax and relax. Here, the entire island was nourished by a strong spirit vein. Not only could he plan and open up a spirit garden as he pleased, but he also met the adepts of his tribe who he had thought were extinct. In this new environment, Wan Yu's level of practice had another breakthrough. He successfully passed the first Thunder trial and reached the mid-Dharma stage. However, just when Luan Yu thought that he had finally found a safe place and was planning to spend the rest of his life on this island, Lu Ping came looking for him again. He had an extremely important request and needed Luan Yu's help. Luan Yu naturally did not hesitate. In order to prevent his identity from being discovered, Lu Ping even gave him the demon transformation bracelet. With such a treasure, Luan Yu naturally did not have to worry about his identity as a wood phoenix adept being discovered. However, this opponent on Scarlet Mist Island, who was at the same level as him, was very difficult to deal with. Luan Yu thought that his ability was better than his opponent's, but this person was extremely cunning. His experience in fighting was many times more than Luan Yu's. This caused Luan Yu to be played around in circles several times. All he had was his ability, but he was unable to defeat his opponent. In the end, it was Lu Ping's appearance that scared his opponent away. This made Luan Yu feel a little guilty. He thought that Lu Ping had helped him enough, but he had never been able to truly help Lu Ping even once. Therefore, without waiting for Lu Ping's instructions, he had already chased after the adept who had invaded the Jinling station on Scarlet Mist Island. Luan Yu had already made up his mind to teach this person a lesson. After this period of fighting with this person, Luan Yu thought that his experience and awareness had been greatly improved. As long as he caught up to the person in front of him, with the bloodline of the Wood Phoenix, he would definitely be able to make things difficult for him. Chapter 14:14. Feng Shutao fled in panic, but before Luan Yu could catch up to him, the person who appeared in front of him stopped him in his tracks. A blue platform suddenly rose from the calm sea. On the platform, the elegant and graceful sect leader, Jinling, looked at Feng Shutao, who stopped in front of her in panic, with a faint smile. "Lu Tianling, it's you." Feng Shutao knew he couldn't escape, so he gritted his teeth. Another ray of light approached Feng Shutao from behind. When the ray of light disappeared, Luan Yu stood behind Feng Shutao and bowed slightly to Lu Tianling. Lu Tianling also bowed slightly to return the greeting. Lu Tianling knew Luan Yu's identity. Although the Wood Luan clan was on the decline, they were starting to recover with Lu Ping's help. Although they were under Jinling's protection, Luan Yu was now the leader of the Wood Luan clan. From this point of view, Luan Yu's identity was equivalent to Lu Tianling's. Out of gratitude or because of Lu Ping, Luan Yu treated Lu Tianling as a senior, but Lu Tianling still had to respect the Wood Luan clan's leader. However, the simple greeting between the two confused Feng Shutao. From the way they bowed, it seemed that the young cultivator wasn't Jinling's disciple. Even Lu Tianling was respectful to him. Could it be that Jinling had invited outside help? This thought only flashed through Feng Shutao's mind for a second. Now that the two of them were blocking his way, he could not afford to think about anything else. It was a moment of life and death. Feng Shutao could not afford to think about anything else. "Lu Tianling, do you want to start a war between Xianling and Jinling?" Feng Shutao's fierce expression was a little funny in Lu Tianling's eyes. "Fellow Feng, you think too highly of yourself. Are you sure you can start a war between our two sects with your identity?" "Of course." Feng Shutao's decisive tone somehow revealed a trace of guilt. "Don't forget that Songhai sect is definitely willing to ally with our sect. Huangli Island has probably been massacred by the Fiend Army already. If you leave now, the old man will promise to persuade Jinling's teacher to back out of this conflict with Jinling." Lu Tianling let out a long sigh and said, "Feng Shutao, you still don't realize the situation you're in? This is already Xianling's sect's territory. Why hasn't anyone from Xianling's sect come to rescue you?" Feng Shutao's expression changed drastically. The young cultivator behind him seemed to be thinking about it as well. Then, as if he had suddenly realized something, he said, "Oh, you've been abandoned. Impossible." Feng Shutao opened his mouth to deny it, but the panic on his face betrayed him. However, he still tried his best to find a reason to boost his confidence. Absolutely impossible. I am Xianling sect's Dao Sheng Laozu's eldest disciple, the future leader of Xianling sect. How can I be abandoned? Haha, teacher must be on his way to help me. Lu Tianling, if you leave now, you might be able to keep your lives. Otherwise, once teacher arrives, you will definitely die in his hands. Teacher will avenge me, so you must not kill me. Seeing Feng Shutao slowly going crazy, Wan Yu said quietly, he has already broken down. Looking at this person who was once an outstanding second-generation disciple like him falling into madness because of being abandoned by the sect. Even though Lu Tianling was the sect master, he couldn't help but sigh. Hearing this, he said softly, if that's the case, clan leader Mu Wan, please help me free him. Lin Shuqing led the Xianling sect disciples back to Xianling Island, but saw that the two Laozus, Dao Sheng and Dao Yin, were already waiting outside Xianling Island. Lin Shuqing was very careful. When he realized that the situation was not right, he immediately led the disciples to retreat. Even so, along the way, he was ambushed by a masked lady. Although this lady was only at the early Dharma stage, her abilities were extraordinary. Her sleeves were like two agile snakes attacking, and the two swords in her sleeves were like the poisonous fangs of agile snakes. Lin Shuqing was sweating profusely from all the attacks she had made. Fortunately, Lin Shuqing was still in the mid-Dharma stage. After the initial panic of being ambushed, he was able to quickly calm down. After defending himself, he slowly launched a counterattack. Bit by bit, he was able to turn the situation around. However, it was beyond his ability to defeat the female practitioner in front of him. However, just as he was being held back, Jinling's cultivators came chasing after him. Although Jinling was suspicious of the masked female practitioner's identity, those who made things difficult for Xianling sect were naturally allies. Without a word, they fought with the Xianling sect cultivators. That was when the casualties among the Xianling sect cultivators that Lin Shuqing led began to appear. When he finally forced the masked female practitioner to retreat and led the disciples out of the encirclement, he suddenly heard the news that Lu Ping had returned to the North Sea. This shocked Lin Shuqing. Fortunately, most of the Xianling sect disciples he brought with him returned safely. Although many of them were injured, they were still alive. When Dao Sheng Laozu saw that Lin Shuqing had returned safely, he could not help but say, "It's good that you're back. It's good that you're back." Lin Shuqing hurriedly said, "Uncle Master, senior brother Feng is not back yet. He led his people too deep into the sea. It's very likely that he will encounter Lu Tianping or be hunted down. Please save him, Uncle Master. I am willing to lead the way." Unexpectedly, Dao Sheng Laozu said, "Settle the disciples first, then go to the Black Spirit Hall to discuss the matter later." Lin Shuqing was stunned and quickly said, "But, however," after Dao Sheng Laozu said this, he turned and left. Lin Shuqing panicked and quickly asked Dao Yin Laozu for help. However, Dao Yin Laozu sighed and patted him on the shoulder, saying, "It's good that you can come back." Before senior brother left the island, Tian Xiang blocked his door. After saying this, he also turned and left. Lin Shuqing's expression changed. After a while, he seemed to understand what had happened and murmured to himself, "It's over. It's over." After Jinling's treasured ship went west, the North Sea Demon Race, Blue Sea Sect, and Xianling Sect attacked Jinling at the same time. The battles were mainly focused on Frost Island, Huangli Island, and Scarlet Mist Island. However, after Jinling's treasured ship went west, he killed Blue Sea Sect's Eastern Pole Laozu, forced back the Demon Race's large-scale attack, and at the same time defeated Xianling Sect's attempt to take advantage of Scarlet Mist Island. Jinling's sect master Lu Tianling, Laozu, personally killed Feng Shutao. During this period, the strength that Jinling displayed shocked the entire North Sea cultivation world. When Lu Ping crossed the stormy ocean in his physical body and returned, the North Sea sects that were still restless had all ceased their activities. Many sects had even sent messengers to celebrate Jinling's promotion to a large sect, including Xianling sect. They wanted to bury the hatchet with Jinling, so that they wouldn't be attacked by such a behemoth in the future. Everyone already knew that Zhenling's power was now established, and the situation of him dominating the North Sea was irreversible. Also, from the strength that Zhenling displayed, even Fei Ling's sect's reputation in the North Sea was far inferior. However, Zhenling's operation was far from over. Although the conflict had been resolved by Zhenling's sect in a more forceful manner, the Blue Sea sect, as the culprit behind all this, had only lost the great ancestor of the East Pole sect, who could not be considered a true great cultivator, was clearly not enough to quell Zhenling's sect's anger. Not long after Lu Ping returned to Frost Island, Zhenling's third-generation Dharma adept, Tianxiang, led the sect's cultivators to wipe out the Blue Sea sect's forces on Frost Island. Zhenling then announced that all the Blue Sea sect's profits from the spirit stone mines on Frost Island would be frozen. All the Blue Sea sect's shares on Frost Island would be held by Zhenling. Zhenling's control over the large spirit stone mines on Frost Island was close to 50%. The same situation happened on Scarlet Mist Island. With Lu Ping personally overseeing the situation, Zhenling's cultivators almost effortlessly took over the Blue Sea sect's forces on the island. The suppression of the Blue Sea sect was far from over. The various forces on the outskirts of the Blue Sea sect all suffered significant losses. Zhenling pressed forward, constantly reducing the Blue Sea sect's forces in the North Sea. Many of the Blue Sea sect's cultivators who tried to resist were immediately suppressed by Zhenling. One mid-Dharma adept and one early Dharma adept died at the hands of Yin Tianchu and Luan Yu. In Zhenling's series of operations, Luan Yu was always at the front line as Zhenling's vanguard. This leader of the Wood Phoenix tribe, who had grown up under the protection of others, after wearing the demon transformation bracelet to remove the worry of being exposed, had been frantically learning from the experiences of others in the process of fighting. The growth of his abilities could be described as rapid. Even Yin Tianchu himself admitted that if they were to fight head-on, even he did not have the confidence to win against Luan Yu. Earthblaze Island was a medium-sized island that Zhenling had taken over from the Blue Sea sect. It was the 39th medium-sized island that Zhenling now controlled. It was originally one of the wealthier medium-sized islands under the Blue Sea sect's jurisdiction, but now it had become the frontline distribution center that Zhenling used to suppress the Blue Sea sect. At this time, Yao Tianyong was pacing up and down the island angrily, saying loudly, "I don't understand. With our sect's current abilities, we can easily kill our way into the Blue Sea sect and completely wipe them out. Why do we still have to suppress them like this? If we don't kill a snake, it will bite us. Don't tell me everyone doesn't understand this. Why do we still keep the Blue Sea sect?" Because Dongi Laozu escaped. Lu Ping's voice sounded from behind Yao Tianyong. "Senior brother, your impatience will not be good for summoning your first lightning tribulation in the future." Yao Tianyong scratched his head and chuckled. "I'm also impatient. Let's not talk about this. Junior brother, you said that we can't destroy the Blue Sea sect because of Dongi Laozu. What is the reason?" Lu Ping said in a low voice. Everyone should have heard about Xiao Baiyu killing LV Taiching in the Purple Sun Palace. But everyone knows that after leaving the Purple Sun Palace, Xiao Baiyu has almost never returned to Skyrend. Why does everyone think that? Yao Tianyong did not even think and said, "He's afraid of being hunted by the Purple Sun Palace. What's there to not know?" Lu Ping shook his head and said, "No, he's afraid of being destroyed." Chapter 14-15. Back then, Xiao Baiyu calmly left the mountain after killing LV Taiching. Of course, it was because he was bound by an oath, but the more important reason was that Purple Sun Palace was waiting for Xiao Baiyu to return to the Heaven-Splitting Sword sect, and then they would use all their strength to wipe out the Heaven-Splitting Sword sect. However, Xiao Baiyu did not stay in Skyrend for long. Very soon, he began to wander the cultivation world for more than 200 years. This caused Purple Sun Palace to be cautious and did not dare to launch a sect-exterminating war against Skyrend. And the reason was the restraint of Xiao Baiyu, who appeared and disappeared mysteriously. Imagine an existence comparable to a pure yang staring at you like a venomous snake, waiting for the moment you were careless to suddenly bite you before retreating and waiting for an opportunity to attack. Although Dongi Laozu could not compare to Xiao Baiyu, Zhenling was not Purple Sun Palace either. Jinling could not withstand the endless harassment of a great cultivator hiding in the dark. Thus, he left Azure Sea Sect behind, leaving it on the verge of being destroyed by Jinling at any time. This was also a deterrent to Dongi Laozu. Once Dongi Laozu acted recklessly, Jinling could launch a sect-exterminating war at any time. Jinling could already confirm that Dongi Laozu was not an Azure Sea Sect. Unless Jinling found traces of Dongi Laozu and killed him, Jinling could only do what Purple Sun Palace did to Skyren back then. Although he could suppress them, he did not dare to launch a sect-exterminating war. Of course, this was not the only reason that made Jinling feel helpless. After all, Jinling had just established his position as the hegemon of the North Sea. If he rashly launched a sect annihilation war at this time, it would definitely cause panic among all the sects and forces in the entire North Sea cultivation world. It might even force them to unite against Jinling. At that time, Jinling would be badly battered. The situation in North Sea had gradually calmed down. Jinling still spared no effort in suppressing the Blue Sea sect, but there was no need for Lu Ping to do the rest himself. After leaving Earthly Blaze Island, Lu Ping hovered above the surface of the sea, as if he was waiting for someone. A moment later, a red cloud floated over, and a masked woman stood gracefully on the cloud, waving at Lu Ping. Lu Ping smiled faintly. He took a step forward and covered an unknown distance in the blink of an eye. In the blink of an eye, he stood on the masked woman's cloud. The fiery red veil slid off the woman's face, and Lu Ping smiled at Qi Lianying and said, "Thank you for stopping Lin Shuqing that day." Qi Lianying rolled his eyes at Lu Ping and said, "I just wanted to scare him. Lin Shuqing was running away, so it didn't make much of a difference whether I stopped him or not." Lu Ping asked again, "How have you been in the North Sea? I'm about to return to Huangli Island. Do you want to come with me?" Qi Lianying giggled and said, "I don't dare to go. I don't want your first wife to misunderstand." No matter how one listened to it, these words were full of ambiguity. Before Lu Ping could reveal a strange expression, Qi Lianying couldn't help but laugh. "All right. Are you still traveling in the North Sea or returning to the East Sea? I'll be taking a detour to the Middle Earth in a few days. Do you want to come with me?" Lu Ping thought about it and asked again. Hearing that Lu Ping was going to the Middle Earth, Qi Lianying's eyes lit up, and she said, "I've never been to the Middle Earth, and the North Sea is very boring. I'll return to the East Sea first, and you must call me when you go to the Middle Earth. Otherwise, I'll definitely teach you a lesson. But why are you going to the Middle Earth?" Lu Ping shrugged and said, "I'll first go to the Heavenly Profound sect to welcome the treasured ship, then go to the Heavenly Moon sect to take a look. After that, I'll be invited to witness a sword duel." Sword duel? Qi Lianying was someone who craved for the world to be in chaos. Hearing that there was such a show to watch, she was even more determined to follow Lu Ping to the Middle Earth. "But really, now that you've recovered most of your memories and appearance, don't you want to come with me to see Master? Master has always felt guilty about your disappearance all these years." Qi Lianying originally wanted to gloss over it, but seeing Lu Ping's serious expression, she could only say in distress, "See what she says. Hug her head and cry? Moreover, although Aunt Qin doesn't like me all these years, she still saved my life and taught me how to cultivate. I owe her a lot. If I return to the sect, what will Aunt Qin do?" Thinking about this, I feel that it's better for me to stay in the East Sea. These years, I've gotten used to living freely. I can do whatever I want on Soundwave Island, and if I really return to the Heavenly Spirit Mountain, I'm afraid I won't be able to adapt there. Lu Ping originally wanted to say something, but he suddenly remembered what Mei Tianqin had said to him. One Jiang Tianqian, one Qi Lianying. The grievances of the previous generation were now entangled in a mess. It was not even clear who was right and who was wrong. As for juniors like Lu Ping, they were even more clueless about the intricate relationship between them. Since Qi Lianying didn't want to return to Jinling, Lu Ping naturally respected her choice. After sending her to the East Sea, Lu Ping also flew towards Huangli Island. "Brother Xie, Brother Sang, I still have to thank the two of you for your help. Huangli Island did not fall into the hands of the demon race again. It's just that I haven't been able to find time to thank the two of you personally these days. Please don't blame me." Lu Ping smiled and cupped his fists towards the two. Xie Tianyang smiled and said, "It's good that you didn't come. The scenery of the North Sea has its own charm. Your arrival has disturbed Brother Sang and me." Sang Yu said, "You and I are sworn brothers. There's no need to be so polite." After the three sat down, Lu Ping then said seriously, "Brother Xie, what is going on with the sword duel between your sect and Skyrend? Brother Xie, are you sure you can win?" "Brother Xie, I also received an invitation from Skyrend at the foot of Tianling Mountain, and it was personally written by Xiao Baiyu. When the time comes, I'm afraid I won't be able to help Brother Xie." At this time, Sang Yu also said, "Speaking of this, our sect's Feng Lu Laozu also received an invitation from Skyrend. The old man has a deep friendship with Xiao Baiyu. When the time comes, I'm afraid he will stand on Xiao Baiyu's side." Xie Tianyang didn't seem surprised that Lu Ping had received an invitation from Skyrend, and he naturally knew about Feng Lu Laozu's matter. He said in a low voice, "I originally wanted to use Brother Lu's reputation as a witness. I believe Skyrend did this for the same reason. Brother Lu, you don't have to take it to heart. As for Feng Lu Laozu, he is Xiao Baiyu's good friend. Their friendship has nothing to do with us." During the sword duel at Purple Sun Palace, Xiao Baiyu had barged into the Purple Sun Palace alone. He had used words to trick the pure Yang Sword Immortal, LV Taiching, to take 3 of his attacks as a wager on whether Skyrend would join the Purple Sun Palace. LV Taiching didn't know it was a trap and was killed by Xiao Baiyu with the heaven-opening sword technique. After that, Xiao Baiyu fled to the ends of the world. Purple Sun Palace didn't dare to attack Skyrend for fear of harming the innocent. When Xiao Baiyu appeared again, he was already pure Yang Laozu, one of the few experts in the world. Purple Sun Palace couldn't do anything to him, so they could only place their hopes on the second sword duel between the two. The second sword duel was also the content of the wager between Xiao Baiyu and Purple Sun Palace. Xiao Baiyu killed LV Taiching by trickery. Although Purple Sun Palace couldn't stop him from leaving due to the wager, it forced Xiao Baiyu to agree to the second sword duel. After listening to Xie Tianyang's story, Lu Ping asked, "I am familiar with the 6 great swordsmen of your sect, Brother Fan, Brother Su, and Brother Xie, but I am not familiar with the other 3. I wonder if Brother Xie has any confidence in this sword duel?" Xie Tianyang smiled bitterly and said, "To be honest, I don't have much confidence. If all 6 of us had advanced to the late Dharma stage, with the help of our sect's secret sword formation, we could have the upper hand in this battle. Now, only Big Brother Yin Nanfei, second brother Fan Mingjie, and I have passed the second thunder trial. Third brother Su Jin is at the final stage of advancing. I don't know if he can reach the late Dharma stage in time for the sword duel. However, even if he succeeds, I'm afraid he won't have time to stabilize his training. As for fourth brother Guo Wanqing and fifth brother Tian Boyang, they won't be able to advance to the late Dharma stage in time for the sword duel." Lu Ping's expression was solemn. He had seen the sword techniques of Xie Tianyang and the others. Although he didn't know how strong Feng Lifeng was, he guessed that he wouldn't be too far off from Fan Mingjie and Xie Tianyang. Although the 3 of them had already advanced to the late Dharma stage, with Lu Ping's current abilities, he could estimate the limits of their abilities. And he had also seen Xiao Baiyu's amazing sword techniques before. In fact, Lu Ping secretly thought that Xiao Baiyu might still be holding back. If that was the case, the key would depend on whether Su Jin could advance to the late Dharma stage and the power of the secret sword formation of Purple Sun Palace that Xie Tianyang had mentioned. The situation in the North Sea had already stabilized. Counting the days, the ship should have left the Ocean of Storms and was about to reach the coast of the Tianxian sect. The 3 of them immediately left the North Sea and took a detour to the East Sea to head towards Central Plains. However, in the fallen Mystery Land, Lu Ping brought along Qi Lianying, who had been waiting for a long time. Qi Lianying was dressed in red and had a red veil covering her face, but it still couldn't hide her beautiful figure and wild aura. This made Xie Tianyang and Sang Yu secretly praise Lu Ping's luck with women. The 4 of them went their separate ways when they reached Central Plains. Lu Ping and Qi Lianying had to go to the Tianxian sect to receive their own ship, while Xie Tianyang returned to Purple Sun Palace to report on his mission. Sang Yu also seemed to have important matters to attend to. After saying goodbye to the 2, Lu Ping and Qi Lianying headed north. Qi Lianying's beautiful eyes darted around as she said, When the Purple Sun Palace and Xiao Baiyu have a sword duel, are you really not going to help? Lu Ping's expression was solemn as he said, I'm not sure. This time, I'm afraid that the two of them are not just dueling for the sake of the bet. There must be some deeper reason behind it. When the time comes, we can only act according to the circumstances. However, when we go to the Tianqian sect this time, we should be able to meet Seven Fans Laozu. Maybe we can learn something from him. Qi Lianying asked again, with your current strength, what will you do if you go up against Xiao Baiyu? Lu Ping was stunned for a moment and said, I have no chance of winning. However, Lu Ping was also a little unconvinced. He said, if I advance to the Pure Yang stage, then Xiao Baiyu may not be my match. Qi Lianying giggled crisply. Lu Ping's arrival attracted the attention of the Tianqian sect from top to bottom. They sent Qingli Laozu to personally welcome him. This was already a sign that they were treating Lu Ping as a sect master and a grandmaster. The current Lu Ping's status was different from before, especially after he crossed the stormy ocean with his physical body. The cultivation world was even more certain that Lu Ping was the culprit behind Yan Jiuxiao's death. As for Lu Ping and Jinling, their status in the cultivation world naturally rose along with it. Chapter 14:16. Over the years, the scourge of Mara along the coast of the Middle Earth had not been eradicated. The reason was that the major sects of the Middle Earth had encountered major incidents in succession over the years, so the eyes of the Middle Earth's practitioners had never paid attention to Mara, who was wreaking havoc along the coast. In addition, the sea was vast and boundless, and Mara's army was wandering everywhere, making it difficult for people to track them. Although the various sects along the coast had the intention to encircle and annihilate them, they could not capture the traces of Mara's army. Naturally, they could not completely eliminate the scourge of Mara. There was another more important reason, which was the threat of the Crystal Palace. The Crystal Palace had always sought a place in the Middle Earth that could be used to establish a foundation for their power to penetrate deep into the Middle Earth. However, this attempt had always been strongly resisted by the various sects along the coast led by the Tianyue sect. The two sides even often had conflicts over the coastal areas. In the past, the Tianyue sect had the secret support of Jiushuan Tower, Wuxing School, Skyward Pavilion, and other holy lands. But now, the Jiushuan Tower had been greatly damaged by Mara's army and had to announce the closure of the mountain. Several pure Yang practitioners of Wuxing School had also died, which caused public anger in the Middle Earth. And Skyward Pavilion had somehow provoked the tyrannical Tortoise clan of the South Sea. In the past, the forces behind the Tianyue sect had no time to care about other things due to various reasons. This was originally the best time for the Crystal Palace to take advantage of the opportunity to expand. However, at this time, the disaster of Mara broke out along the coast. Under the deliberate connivance of the Tianyue sect and other sects, they happened to isolate the exit of the East Stormy Ocean from the Middle Earth. The Tianyue sect deliberately shrank, so the Mara's army all went to the various strongholds established by the Crystal Palace in the sea. Instead, the Crystal Palace had to face all the Mara's army that was wreaking havoc on the sea and had to stop the expansion. This was also where the Tianqian sect and the Heavenly Moon sect had always been at odds. The Tianqian sect did not directly face the pressure of the Crystal Palace, so they needed to eradicate the hidden danger of Mara on the surface of the sea. However, the Heavenly Moon sect needed the existence of Mara's army to form a natural barrier against the expansion of the Crystal Palace's power. However, the sea was vast and the north and south were the same. Even if the Heavenly Profound sect cleared out the Mara on their own sea, there would still be the Heavenly Moon sect's Mara army on the coast. Similarly, one of the most important reasons why the Tianqian sect allied with Zhengling was that they wanted to join forces with Zhengling to completely eliminate the hidden danger of Mara in the sea. However, in this way, the number of Mara in the sea area of the Tianqian sect would be divided, which would give the Crystal Palace an opportunity to take advantage of. This was also the reason why the Heavenly Moon sect immediately came to the Tianqian sect after hearing that Zhengling was about to become a large sect. The Yulon River meandered to the west. Not far from where the Tianxian sect was located was the estuary of the second largest river in the Central Plains. Back then, Lu Ping followed the meandering Yulon River to the east, and finally comprehended the mystery of the great river flow's east sword technique at the estuary of the Yulon River. He separated this great sword technique from the all rivers in the sea sword technique and laid the foundation for it to become a supreme sword technique by itself. Now that Lu Ping once again came to the estuary of the Yulon River, the scene he saw was naturally different from that time when he was still a minor repairs cultivator of the forging core. Green and red light flashed in Lu Ping's eyes, and he saw a group of fish at the estuary of the Yulon River. This group of fish was divided into dozens of groups, always cruising back and forth in the waters of dozens of miles around the estuary, but never leaving the estuary. Qingli Laozu smiled and said, "This is the Wuling fish Dao soldiers left by Wuling Laozu. For thousands of years, this group of Dao soldiers has been guarding the estuary of the Yulon River, so that the Demon Clan in the Yulon River and the Demon Clan in the sea have never cooperated with each other. At the same time, this is the fundamental reason why Mara from the sea has never invaded the coast. Back then, Wuling Laozu used 3,000 Wuling fish Dao soldiers to block the attack of 100,000 Mara's army and became famous. Since then, these Wuling fish Dao soldiers have been guarding here. Back then, when Lu Ping gained enlightenment on swordsmanship here, he practiced his swordsmanship without fear. But he didn't know that under his feet, there were hidden dangers that could take his life at any time. These 3,000 Dao soldiers were far more powerful than when Lu Dague was defending against the Demon Clan's attack on Huangli Island. The 300 Wuling fish Dao soldiers that Lu Ping trained were very messy. Most of the Dao soldiers were in the late blood condensation stage, and only a few were barely in the core forging stage. But these 3,000 Dao soldiers were all in the late blood condensation stage, and nearly 100 of them were in the core forging stage. Compared to these 3,000 Dao soldiers, Lu Ping's 300 Wuling fish Dao soldiers were just a motley crew. So this battle will be led by the Wuling fish Dao soldiers? Qingli Laozu nodded and said, "Indeed. This time, the four sects, your sect, Heavenly Moon sect, and Carefree Pavilion will work together to suppress the Mara's army on the sea in a specific area. Then, with the help of Mo Luo's power, we can drive the Crystal Palace's forces back to the East Sea. But it's not like there won't be any problems." Lu Ping looked at Qingli Laozu in surprise and said, "What?" Qingli Laozu smiled unnaturally and said, "You also know that Xiao Baiyu and Senior Qifan are close friends. He has seen through this, so Skyrind also wants to interfere." Lu Ping's expression froze. The four sects had planned this for a long time. Jinling had obtained the transfer point of their allies and the large sects, so their status was recognized. Heavenly Xian sect solved the problem at the sea. Heavenly Moon sect might suffer a greater loss, but they could completely eradicate the hidden danger of the Crystal Palace's expansion. As for Carefree Pavilion, they already had an unresolvable hatred with the Crystal Palace, and they also had a close relationship with Heavenly Moon sect. As long as they could make the Crystal Palace suffer losses, they would not shirk their responsibility. The final result of this matter could be said to be a happy ending. However, at this time, Skyrind wanted to interfere. It was not that Skyrind's participation would affect the cooperation of the four sections. After all, Skyrind was an old sect that was not weaker than Heavenly Xian sect. With their participation, this matter would definitely be easier. However, with the strength of the four sects, it was completely possible for Skyrind to participate at this time only for this matter. As expected, Qingli Laozu continued to say, "What Xiao Baiyu means is that Jinling, Heavenly Xian, and Heavenly Moon sect's cooperation is enough to suppress Mara's army from the sea and wait for an opportunity to expel the Crystal Palace's forces on the sea. At this time, Skyrind and Carefree Pavilion can completely take the opportunity to block the entrance of the East Sea Storm Ocean from behind and block the Crystal Palace's forces to the west of the Storm Ocean from retreating." Lu Ping suddenly gasped and said, "Does he mean to destroy all the forces of the Crystal Palace in the west of the Storm Ocean?" Qingli Laozu smiled bitterly and said, "I'm afraid so." Lu Ping couldn't help but ask, "Isn't he afraid that the Crystal Palace will be angry and take revenge?" Although the four sects expelled the forces of the Crystal Palace in the name of encircling and suppressing Mara, They were also offending the Crystal Palace. However, after all, they had the reason to exterminate Mara. The forces of the Crystal Palace were only expelled but not annihilated. The two parties didn't completely fall out with each other. What's more, the four sects were also not weak. Even if the Crystal Palace wanted to do something, it would have to weigh whether it was worth it or not. It could be said that this time the four sects joined hands to step on the bottom line of the Crystal Palace. But if they really acted like Skyrend, it would be a complete declaration of war with the Crystal Palace. At that time, even if the Crystal Palace was concerned about the strength of the four sects, they couldn't remain indifferent when their practitioners were slaughtered. What's more, in the face of such a huge sect that had been passed down since the beginning of the world by the seventh patriarch, no one knew what other trump cards they were hiding. Thinking of the heaven and earth wine tripod at the foot of Luo Xian Mountain and the heaven-covering feather fan above Nine Mysteries Tower, Lu Ping still shuddered with fear. Xiao Baiyu thinks that this is the best time to weaken the Crystal Palace. The Crystal Palace has been spreading around these years, which also scattered the strength of the sections. It's a good time to destroy them one by one. Destroy them one by one? That's the Crystal Palace. Lu Ping couldn't help but ask, then what does Senior Chief An mean? Qingli Laozu also showed a helpless expression and said, Senior Chief An didn't agree at first, but after the secret talk with Xiao Baiyu, he seemed to be a little hesitant. Also, Full Moon Laozu of the Heavenly Moon sect also seemed to be a little undecided. This time, since your sect has come to the east, Xiao Baiyu also wants to meet you. Lu Ping said in surprise, Xiao Baiyu is in Tianqin City now? Why does he want to see me? This matter is decided by the elders of the sect. It's not something that a junior can decide. Hearing this, Qingli Laozu smiled and said, Young friend, there's no need to belittle yourself. With your current position, even if you don't interfere with the matters of the sect, your words and actions have an incomparably great influence on the sect. If I were Xiao Baiyu, I would also find you at the first instance. Lu Ping smiled helplessly and said, But this time, the decision is made by Martial Uncle Jiang Tianlin of our sect. I will respect Martial Uncle's opinion. Qingli Laozu smiled and didn't comment on Lu Ping's words. That's right. Lu Ping suddenly thought of something and said, What is Xiao Yao Pavilion thinking? If they really do this, Xiao Yao Pavilion and Skyrend, who are in the East Sea, will instead bear the brunt of the Crystal Palace's revenge. Qingli Laozu said helplessly, That's the strange thing. This time, Xiao Yao Pavilion is on Xiao Baiyu's side. It's also because of Xiao Yao Pavilion's support that Xiao Baiyu is so confident to persuade the other three sections. Lu Ping was stunned. However, after thinking about it, it couldn't be more normal. With the opposition between Xiao Yao Pavilion and the Crystal Palace, even with this scheme, the relationship between the two parties wouldn't get worse. As for revenge, Xiao Yao Pavilion had been suppressed by the Crystal Palace for many years. Now that there was a chance to make the Crystal Palace suffer a great loss, Xiao Yao Pavilion naturally wouldn't let go of this opportunity. In a sense, this time, Xiao Baiyu's proposal was probably the one that really hit it off with Xiao Yao Pavilion. Chapter 14-17. Xiao Baiyu looked at Lu Ping and smiled. Is this the third time we've met? Lu Ping thought for a moment and said, More than that. Xiao Baiyu smiled and said directly, Although I have already overestimated your growth, it seems that it is still far from enough. Your rise is just like the sect you belong to. It is beyond everyone's expectations. Lu Ping smiled and did not say anything. Xiao Baiyu did not mind and continued, Everyone can see that Jinling will rise in the North Sea, but no one would have thought that Jinling would have such a terrifying number of high-level adepts. If it wasn't for the fact that Jinling does not have a strong enough foundation, that the time it took for it to rise is too short, and that the distribution of Dharma adepts in each generation is not reasonable, just based on the number of Dharma adepts in your sect, it is already enough to be mentioned in the same breath as Skyrend, the Tianqin sect, and the Tianyue sect. On this point, Xiao Baiyu was very much in line with Zhenling's reality. Currently, there were only 3 adepts left in the first generation of Zhenling, and the number of second-generation Dharma adepts had already reached 9. In the third generation, The number of Dharma adepts in Jinling had surged. With Lu Tianping and Yin Tianchu as the leaders, there were now more than 15 adepts who had reached the Dharma stage, and this number was still growing. Furthermore, these were just the adepts that Jinling had cultivated. If the outer sect elders such as Xianglu, Lei Di, and Qinghu were added, the number of Dharma adepts in Jinling would be even larger. It was no wonder that after this promotion battle, the strength that Jinling had displayed had shocked the entire world of practitioners. In reality, Jinling had already realized this problem. Although the appearance of a large number of Dharma adepts could make Jinling flourish for a while, such a large group of Dharma adepts would definitely take up a large amount of training resources. Moreover, the North Sea training world was a barren place, which made the already tight situation even more difficult, to the point where it would affect the training of the younger generation. After all, the legacy of a sect was a long-term plan. Such an uncontrolled expansion of the sect's strength would definitely cause the younger generation of disciples to become weaker due to the lack of sufficient training resources. The truly strong sects would control the number of Dharma adepts in the sect very well. Perhaps there were many adepts who had the potential to advance to the Dharma stage, but they would always make them compete with each other and pick out the more outstanding disciples to train. Although this might reduce the number of Dharma adepts that the sect might have, it could save a large amount of training resources to train the younger generation of disciples. At the same time, a portion of the training resources could be stored away in case of emergencies. Of course, there might be some disciples who had their own opportunities. Originally, they had been quietly abandoned by the sect, but they had managed to advance through their own hard work. This way, the sect would not have to expend too much in order to gain a powerful disciple. This was something that any sect would welcome. Only in this way could a sect be able to carry on a good succession with limited training resources. At the same time, when the sect was faced with a crisis, it could also train a large number of Dharma adepts in a short period of time to help the sect overcome the crisis. Now that the fourth generation of Jinling's adepts had gradually grown up, the more outstanding ones had already begun to enter the late core forging stage. The matter of the fourth generation of adepts advancing to the Dharma stage had also begun to be brought up more and more by the sect. Although the fourth generation of adepts did not have as many outstanding adepts as the third generation, there were still many disciples who were looked upon favorably by the sect. However, Lu Ping had already received news from the head of the sect that the sect was only prepared to select 15 to 20 of the most outstanding adepts from the fourth generation of disciples to become direct disciples. They would compete with each other and strengthen their foundations. Then, they would select 10 to 12 disciples who stood out from the rest to train and help them condense their Dharma power. It could be said that the head of the sect, Lu Tianling, had an extremely accurate grasp of Zhenling. She did not bite off more than she could chew just because the sect's strength was expanding, especially because of the explosion of the third generation of Dharma adepts. Instead, she was extremely pragmatic in reducing the number of fourth-generation adepts who could advance to the Dharma stage. The entire process was estimated to take 50 to 100 years, and the fourth generation of Zhenling's disciples would begin to advance to the Dharma stage. Lu Ping smiled and said, "Thank you for your advice, Senior. However, Senior Xiao has come to see me this time only to talk about some plans for the development of the sect, right?" Xiao Baiyu smiled and said, "Of course not. I'm just saying this because I feel that your sect is an ambitious sect. You shouldn't just limit your vision to a corner of the North Sea, but should look at the entire world of training." Lu Ping did not become complacent because of Xiao Baiyu's words. Instead, he said calmly, "Ideals can't be separated from reality. It is already difficult for Jinling to maintain its position in the North Sea, and I'm afraid that outside of the North Sea, there are many things that we don't have the strength to do." The admiration in Xiao Baiyu's eyes deepened, and he said, "This is your sect underestimating itself. With your sect's current strength, you have a lot of potential in the world of training. Also, as the saying goes, the tree may desire peace, but the wind will not stop. If Jinling wants to have a stable place in the North Sea, it will also need the consent of others." Lu Ping's expression changed, and he said in a low voice, "What do you mean, Senior?" Xiao Baiyu had long expected that Lu Ping would ask such a question, and as soon as his voice fell, he answered, "There are two meanings. The first is in Zhenling itself, and the second is in you. Lu Ping raised his eyebrows and said, I'd like to hear the details. Xiao Baiyu said with fervor and assurance, let's talk about your sect first. I have also heard about what happened after your sect's treasure ship sailed to the west this time. Although the process was dangerous, in fact, your sect and little friend Lu already had a well-thought-out plan. Whether it is the Songhai sect, the Xinling sect, or the Taishan sect, they are just clowns who can't achieve anything. Even if the Beihai sect sends out all its forces, the final result is just a scare but no danger. Lu Ping could not help but ask, what is Senior trying to say? Doesn't your sect think that everything is too easy? Easy? Lu Ping thought for a while and said, Senior, you mean? Xiao Baiyu smiled and said, yes, it is the Crystal Palace. If the Crystal Palace intervenes this time, let alone whether your sect can succeed, even if you succeed, how heavy a price will you have to pay? Lu Ping was a little unconvinced and said, the reason why our sect sets sail at this time is that the Crystal Palace has no time to attend to other things this time. Of course, it is because the Crystal Palace has no time to attend to other things. But what about when the Crystal Palace has time to spare? Lu Ping said, you mean that the Crystal Palace will return to the North Sea? Xiao Baiyu said matter-of-factly, unless we can make the Crystal Palace retreat in the face of difficulties, otherwise, with the nature of the Crystal Palace, they will think that the entire overseas cultivation world belongs to them. Seeing that Lu Ping was silent, Xiao Baiyu continued, now, in the overseas cultivation world, other than the Crystal Palace, there are 9 other large sections. I don't know if you have noticed that other than the Wind Thunder Island and the Purple Talisman Pavilion, which are vassals of the Crystal Palace, only the Jinling family is a local sect of the overseas cultivation world. Lu Ping was stunned for a moment before he heard Xiao Baiyu continue, be it the 4 major sects of the Southern Sea, or the Eastern Sea's Skyrind and Carefree Pavilion. When traced back to their origins, they were all driven overseas to rebuild their sections. As for the local sects in the overseas cultivation world, Flying Spirit Island was destroyed 4,000 years ago. You've personally witnessed the collapse of the Northern Alliance, and the Southern Sea doesn't even have a single local major sect. As the largest local sect in the Southern Sea, the Yulin sect has long reached the qualifications to be promoted to a major sect, but it has never built a treasured ship. It was only when it hooked up with the Yuan clan and wanted to promote its sect that it unexpectedly ran into the conflict between the 4 major sects of the Southern Sea and the Skyward Pavilion. The Bague clan also interfered in the middle. The stormy ocean from the Southern Sea to the Central Plains was completely sealed off, so naturally, the promotion of the Yulin sect was impossible. Although the Jinling sect has successfully promoted to a major sect, I'm afraid that the crisis of your sect has just begun. After Xiao Baiyu finished speaking, Lu Ping was silent at the side, but the affection on his face was changing rapidly. Obviously, Lu Ping was digesting Xiao Baiyu's previous words in his mind. Xiao Baiyu's words might be exaggerated, especially the destruction of the Northern Alliance and failing sect. Perhaps it was not the Crystal Palace's purge of the overseas local sections. From the information that Lu Ping had, especially the destruction of failing sect, there might be other hidden reasons. However, it was also true that the Crystal Palace was the main force behind the destruction of these sections. From this point of view, what Xiao Baiyu said was also true. From the behavior of Xiao Baiyu, perhaps Skyrind had also felt the pressure from the Crystal Palace, so he spared no effort to unite the overseas sects and coastal sects to resist the Crystal Palace. After a long time, Lu Ping let out a long sigh of relief and said, Senior, there is one more reason about me that I haven't told you. Xiao Baiyu couldn't help laughing and said, you and I are the well-deserved best among the practitioners of the same generation. Even when I was like you, I might not have such achievements as you. Even I have to live outside for 200 years. Little friend, do you think the Crystal Palace will let you go? Xiao Baiyu and Skyrind could cause such a big movement. If there is another Lu Tianping and Jinling, the overseas cultivation world will be in chaos. Danger always needs to be nipped in the bud. Lu Ping smiled and said, so, instead of waiting for the opponent to come and slaughter us, why not take the initiative to attack? Xiao Baiyu suddenly smiled. He knew that Lu Ping had probably already agreed with his approach. The two changed the topic at the same time. Lu Ping originally wanted to ask him about the sword duel in Xiang Palace, but unexpectedly, Xiao Baiyu didn't care about it. Instead, he showed a trace of seriousness on his face and said carefully, "That day at the Qingming River, although I invited Lu Xiaoyu and was rejected once, this time I still want to invite you to join us again. That day, your cultivation was not good, but now you are qualified to be on equal footing with us, so I hope you can consider it seriously." This time, Lu Ping didn't refuse immediately like before. Instead, he looked at Xiao Baiyu seriously and asked, "What are you planning?" Chapter 14:18. After Xiao Baiyu left, Lu Ping sat quietly in the quiet room that Tianqian sect had arranged for him in Tianqian City for a day and a night. Xiao Baiyu told Lu Ping everything about their organization, which also meant that Lu Ping had finally agreed to join them. Ambition was really a wonderful thing. When he heard it from others, he always felt that it was inconceivable, unbelievable, and fantastic. However, when he decided to participate in it himself, and the seed in his heart was ignited, he realized that everything was so tempting, and the prospects were so bright, and the future was so beautiful. An ambitious person would never be afraid of challenges. On the contrary, every time a challenge came, it would stimulate his ambition. When his ambition was big enough, he would even take the initiative to accept challenges, and even take the initiative to look for challenges. Although some of the details of the plan that Xiao Baiyu revealed seemed extremely crazy, Lu Ping had to admit that these ideas were supported by sufficient reasons, and there were reasons for success. Once the plan was successful, it would be a great opportunity for these participants and the forces behind them. Therefore, Lu Ping could not help but be tempted. After a day and a night, when Lu Ping opened his bright eyes made Lu Ping's temperament change. His complacent demeanor naturally brought a temperament that made people believe, worship, and even submit to him. Since he wanted to take this path, he would start by challenging the authority of the Crystal Palace in the overseas cultivation world. After walking out of the quiet room, Xiahou Wushang, who was waiting for Lu Ping outside, looked at Lu Ping and was stunned. Lu Ping said with a smile, "Brother Xiahou, I can't stand you staring at me like this." Xiahou Wushang could not help laughing and said, "Brother Lu seems to be different from before." "Oh?" Lu Ping asked, "What's the difference?" Xiahou Wushang shook his head and said, "I can't tell. It seems that some places are very similar to Martial Granduncle 7 fans, but I can't tell at all." Lu Ping laughed soundlessly and asked, "Has our sect's treasured ship arrived?" Xiahou Wushang said, "Yes. The secret outpost set up by our sect overseas has received a message from Jiang Tianlin Laozu. The treasure ship has sailed out of the storm ocean and encountered a wave of Mara's army. After repelling Mara's army, the treasure ship is now anchored at the entrance of the storm ocean." Lu Ping perked up and said, "So we can start?" Xiahou Wushang nodded and said, "There's no time to lose. After Mara's army is blocked at the entrance of the storm ocean, it is very likely that they will immediately counterattack. Martial Granduncle Dong Lu has already gathered 3,000 Wuling Fish Dao soldiers at the mouth of the Yulon River to attack first. Our sect has also made preparations and will set off soon." The Tianqian sect speed was fast enough, but it was naturally much slower than Lu Ping alone. Although the 3,000 Wuling Fish Dao soldiers controlled by Dong Lu Laozu were fast enough in the sea, they encountered Mara 100 miles out of the mouth of the river. Even though it was only a small group of Mara, they were crushed by the 3,000 Dao soldiers formation before they could cause any waves. After that, the Dao soldier formation encountered more and more Mara, and the advancing speed inevitably slowed down. Although Lu Ping was in a hurry to cross the sea and meet up with the ship near the stormy ocean, he still paid forefather Dong Lu a visit when he passed by the Dao soldier formation. Then, he observed the true power of the Wuling Fish Dao soldier formation. Under the cover of Lu Ping's divine thoughts, he could see that under the control of Dong Lu Laozu, the 3,000 Wuling Fish Dao soldiers were divided into 10 shoals, and each shoal had 300 Wuling fish that formed a small Dao soldier formation. The 10 shoals were lined up horizontally, and each shoal was about 5 kilometers apart. The 10 shoals could cover an area of 100 kilometers. If they encountered a small group of Mara, a single shoal was enough to deal with them. If they encountered a larger shoal, there would immediately be shoals coming to their aid. Unless they encountered the main force of Mara's army, the 3,000 Wuling fish Dao soldiers could go on a rampage in the sea. The storm ocean near the heavenly Xian sect happened to be in the Northeast Sea. After the Dao soldier formation set off from the mouth of the Yulon River, it took a diagonal line from the southwest to the northeast. The heavenly Xian sect cultivators who set off later followed the path opened by the Dao soldier formation and only left a small group of cultivators to advance north to kill Mara. Most of the heavenly Xian sect cultivators headed south and began to drive the rampaging Mara army south. The key to completing this entire process was that Jinling's treasure ship could guard the entrance to the storm ocean. If they could not guard the entrance, once the Mara army on the sea was driven away by the heavenly Xian sect, a considerable number of them would try to retreat into the storm ocean to hide. If that happened, the meticulously planned plan of the 4 major sects would be greatly disrupted. After witnessing the true power of the Wuling fish Dao soldier formation, Lu Ping passed the Dao soldier formation and rushed to the entrance of the storm ocean. In reality, it was not just Lu Ping. Most of the high-level cultivators of the heavenly Xian sect above the Dharma phase had already passed the line of defense set up by the ordinary cultivators and rushed into the depths of the sea to find the high-level Mara to drive away. During this period, Lu Ping also encountered some Mara's obstruction. However, for Lu Ping at this time, even the appearance of an Azura might not have much effect on him. However, whenever he encountered a high-level Mara, Lu Ping would often show his strength to scare them away. Then, he would pretend to chase them and drive them to the south. These high-level Mara were the main force that the 4 major sects used to plot against the Crystal Palace. They could not be lost at this time. However, after passing the Dao soldier formation and going more than 100 miles into the sea, Lu Ping's body flashed with a golden light. Then, he turned into a pool of water and disappeared into the sea. Lu Ping's cultivation of the water transformation technique had reached an extremely high level. In the sea, it was difficult for even the water Azura to find his trace. However, if he wanted to fly extremely fast in the water, he had to use the body water transformation talisman. The storm ocean was about 3,000 miles from the Middle-earth continent. After Lu Ping performed the water transformation technique, it didn't take long for him to reach the sea near the storm ocean. The violent spiritual qi shock forced Lu Ping to stop the conveyance light and rise from the sea. Then, he saw several miles away, about thousands of Mara's army, led by 2 Azuras, 7 or 8 Jade Mara, and more than 10 Blood Mara, had surrounded the treasure ship. Then, they charged at the Jinling treasure ship one after another. Just hundreds of feet behind the treasure ship, in the space entrance of the storm ocean, the violent shock caused by the battle was like a wrinkled lake surface, with circles of ripples. Although the Mara's army's offensive was fierce, it never made any progress in the face of the treasure ship. Instead, the various magical powers and spells on the treasure ship caused a large number of casualties. However, in the face of the Mara's army, which had an absolute advantage and was guarded by 2 Azuras, although Jinling could use the treasure ship to defend, he couldn't beat the Mara's army back. At this time, the treasure ship couldn't move in order to guard the entrance of the storm ocean behind it. Therefore, it could only fight head-on with the Mara's army. However, in the face of Mara's fearless attack, casualties were inevitable despite the treasure ship's defensive formation. In particular, when the 2 Azuras attacked, they would often hide among the attacking Mara's army, making it difficult for the cultivators on the treasure ship to detect them. Then, they would suddenly attack and pierce through the treasure ship's defensive formation. Before the formation's protective shield could be repaired, the Jade Mara or Blood Mara would take the opportunity to kill the Jinling cultivators on the treasure ship with great tacit understanding. When Lu Ping saw the 2 Azuras appear, he was surprised. Lu Ping had come fast enough, but he didn't expect that the Mara's army in the sea area of the Heavenly Mystery Sect would gather such a powerful force to counterattack in such a short time. Was this a coincidence, or was there something unexpected? Lu Ping didn't have time to think too much about it. At this time, although Jinling's situation could be defended for a short time, It would be very bad if it dragged on. Lu Ping used the water transformation technique to hide himself in the seawater and quickly approached the battle. When he was only a few hundred feet away from the battle, one of the two Asuras seemed to suddenly notice something and suddenly turned to look at the sea. At this time, Lu Ping suddenly burst out of the seawater. The sword of true spirit in his hand immediately turned into 6 flood dragons and rushed toward the Mara's army that was 100 feet away. The first move Lu Ping made was the battle formula of the heaven-opening sword technique that he had mastered so far. The 6 sword light flood dragons did not attack the 2 Asuras. Instead, they rushed toward the 6 Jade Mara's army from different directions. This was beyond the expectations of the 2 Asuras. With Lu Ping's current power, the heaven-opening sword technique was not to be underestimated. The 6 flood dragons went around the 2 Asuras and went straight for the Jade Mara. It immediately caused chaos in the Mara's army. The 2 Asuras quickly tried to stop them, but they only had time to break 2 of the Flood Dragon sword lights. They could not do anything to the remaining 4 Flood Dragon sword lights. A Jade Shura that was targeted by the sword light reached out and picked up 2 big Shuras. She threw them at the sword light Flood Dragons, and then they were swallowed by the sword light Flood Dragons. However, this Jade Shura was able to escape the heaven-opening sword technique's attack. However, the remaining 3 Jade Devils were not so lucky. 2 of them were killed by the Horned Light Serpent on the spot, while the last one survived. However, its primordial spirit treasure and one of its legs were chewed to pieces by the Horned Light Serpent. The Jinling cultivators had clearly seen Lu Ping's sword techniques. When Lu Ping killed 2 Jade Demons and severely injured a Jade Shura, everyone on the ship suddenly cheered. Just as Lu Ping relieved the pressure on the ship, an Asura roared and rushed toward Lu Ping. Chapter 1419. Only one? I'll use you to test how far I've progressed in my training. Facing the charging Asura, Lu Ping wasn't afraid at all. Instead, he was overjoyed. The sword of true spirit trembled and 9 sword rays flew out from the sword. The 9 sword rays condensed the spiritual energy in the air and formed 9 Jiao dragons that bared their fangs and brandished their claws. The 9 Jiao dragons stood in different directions and vaguely formed a huge net that enveloped the charging Asura. Because the Asura had a companion spiritual treasure that was almost equivalent to a pure Yang spirit treasure, the Asura's true ability was often between a late Dharma adept and a pure Yang adept. Previously, when Lu Ping was at the mid-Dharma stage, he could kill a heavily injured Asura in a one-on-one fight. Now that he had advanced to the late Dharma stage, Lu Ping's ability had increased by several times. Naturally, it was not difficult for him to defeat an uninjured Asura. The only thing that Lu Ping cared about was how long it would take him to defeat it. However, Lu Ping seemed to have already expected this to happen. Just as the Asura broke free, the sword of true spirit had already transformed into a raging river of swords that rolled towards it. This kind of supreme power that was so powerful that it covered the sky and the earth often had an obvious characteristic, which was that it was impossible to dodge. When faced with the impact of such a power, one could only face it head-on. Of course, there were times when such a power would inevitably decrease its power because the area it covered was too large. However, this also depended on who was using it. Although this Asura was also a water Asura, in the face of the mighty and invincible aura of the Great River Flow's East Sword technique, it was not easy for it to escape even though it was able to protect itself. This was the effect Lu Ping wanted. After performing the Great River East Sword technique, the true vitality in Lu Ping's body surged like a great river. He did not show any signs of temporary lack of true vitality after performing the supreme magic. Instead, he quickly formed a seal in front of his chest and pressed it down on the water Shura, who could not dodge in time. Although Lu Ping and the Asura were separated by dozens of feet, the seal seemed to ignore the existence of space. The moment Lu Ping made the seal, it had already been applied to the Asura's body. The protective divine art around Asura instantly let out a cracking sound. Immediately after, Asura himself seemed to have suffered a heavy blow. His entire body was sent flying backward like a prawn. Lu Ping's consecutive attacks had always been like a raging river. Once he attacked, there was no reason for him to stop halfway. This kind of powerful divine art that was so closely linked gave people a feeling that it could penetrate through any hole and was impossible to resist. Just as the Azura was hit by Lu Ping's mysterious seal, the sword of true spirit was ready to attack again. A green dragon roared out of the sword light and crashed into the Azura, who had yet to recover from Lu Ping's attack. The third attack, Green Dragon Sea Disturbance Technique, the Azura was already severely injured. At this time, the Azura finally panicked. Before it could completely control its body, it had already stumbled to escape into the distance. The other Azura also realized that the situation was not good and tried to come to help. How could Lu Ping let such a good opportunity slip away? He pressed his hands down slightly on the sea under his feet. The entire sea suddenly trembled, and a muffled rumble came from the depths of the sea. The two Azuras were about to converge. Once the two Azuras joined forces, it would be difficult for Lu Ping to kill them. However, at this moment, a series of 18 rotating water pillars suddenly hung upside down from the bottom of the sea. Like a row of bars in a prison, it completely separated the two Azuras. Although the two were close, they could no longer converge. The water spout created by Lu Tianling was originally an evolution of the water control technique. Now, in the hands of Lu Ping, this inherited divine art of the Dao Zhonghua lineage was finally carried forward. It couldn't fight, couldn't escape, and its reinforcements were intercepted. The Azura, who had lost its backup, finally panicked. But Lu Ping's methods still did not stop. Just when the Azura was unable to break through the obstruction of Lu Ping's water spout and was about to escape in another direction, its body suddenly sank. The seawater under its feet had formed a whirlpool, and the tumbling seawater was thrown backward. It was unknown when Lu Ping had set up the Sea of All Rivers sword array with the sword of true spirit. As the Azura cried out in alarm, the powerful binding force of the All Rivers run into the sea sword formation made it impossible for him to break free. Then, the sword formation slowly rose into the air, and even the Azura's companion spiritual treasure was completely engulfed by the sword formation, leaving behind only a miserable howl. There were a total of 5 attacks. Lu Ping calculated in his heart, what would happen if he used the Aqua Sword to cast the invisible sword technique? What would happen if he used the avatar body? What would happen if he attacked with the 9 Dragons Bell? What would happen if he used the Linglong Cauldron? What would happen if he used the Boundless Sea Mulberry Field technique? What would happen if he used the Natal Gentian Array? What would happen if he used the Having Spirit Treasure? And what would happen if he summoned the dragon aspect? In the end, Lu Ping came to a conclusion. It seemed that the Azura was no longer a threat to him. Just after Lu Ping killed an Azura in a head-on confrontation for 5 rounds, the Mara army that was besieging the treasured ship had actually collapsed. Only a few fearless Mara were still relentlessly attacking the treasured ship. Lu Ping's body shook, and an invisible aura immediately calmed the turbulent space around him. Then, he took a step forward and appeared above the treasured ship. A huge bell about 10 feet high floated in front of Lu Ping's head. The walls of the bell were engraved with 9 flood dragons, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws in the clouds. As the huge bell flickered with a faint light above Lu Ping's head, the 9 flood dragons seemed to have come to life, swimming on the walls of the bell. Lu Ping took a deep breath, stretched out his finger, and flicked the huge bell. Bang! With the treasured ship below Lu Ping as the center, a ripple that could almost be seen with the naked eye formed a huge sound wave ring that spread in all directions. The hundreds of Mara that were still besieging the treasured ship bore the brunt of the sound wave. First, more than 100 small Mara immediately solved the problem in midair, followed by a group of big Mara that smashed into the sea like hailstones and never floated up again. Then, dozens of big Mara fell into the sea with their heads in their hands amid shrill roars, constantly struggling. Then, a few blood Mara steered their escape lights as if they were drunk, slowly fleeing into the distance while sticking close to the surface of the sea. Only a few Jade Mara steered their escape lights with trembling bodies and fled away from the sea near the treasured ship in panic. As for the other Azura, after Lu Ping killed the previous Azura, it had already led most of the Mara army to retreat. The remaining Mara that were still besieging the treasured ship were mostly deployed by the previous Azura. Although the Mara retreated, it fled in all directions. Dozens of escape lights immediately rose from the treasured ship and chased after the Mara. Then, they formed a large net and chased the escaping Mara to the south in an orderly manner. Lu Ping fell into the treasured ship, and the Jinling disciples on the treasured ship were still talking about Lu Ping's heroic act of killing the Azura. They looked at Lu Ping with awe and admiration. Seeing that Jiang Tianlin had already come out of the treasure cabin, Lu Ping asked with a smile, "Martial uncle, was the trip to the storm ocean smooth?" Jiang Tianlin smiled and said, "Although the entire process was extremely dangerous, in the end, there was no danger." Before Lu Ping landed on the treasured ship, he saw that the body of the treasured ship was covered in all kinds of mottled marks. The treasured ship itself was protected by formations, and the body of the ship was connected with all kinds of seals and runes. Ordinary treasures could not damage the body of the treasured ship at all. Only the spatial storms in the storm ocean could ignore the protective formations and directly affect the body of the treasured ship. Jiang Tianlin asked about the current situation of the North Sea. Lu Ping roughly described the situation after the treasured ship entered the storm ocean. Hearing that the forces of Blue Sea Sect and Supreme Profound Sect invaded Frost Island, injured Tian Shuelaozu, and colluded with the demon race to ambush Huangli Island, even Jiang Tianlin's expression changed. He said fiercely, "One day, I will destroy the inheritance of Blue Sea Sect." After hearing that Tianjiang Laozu had passed away, Jiang Tianlin and the many Jinling disciples on the treasured ship all showed sad expressions. This old man had spent all his efforts on the treasured ship in his last 100 years. Now that the treasured ship had successfully set sail for the Middle-earth, the old man did not live to see the treasured ship return smoothly. One could not be immersed in sadness for too long. After Jinling repelled the first counterattack of Mara's army, perhaps it was because of Lu Ping's tyrannical strength, or perhaps it was because of the deterrence of the 9 Dragon Bell, Mara's army did not organize another counterattack. The Sky Profound sect was not slow. They quickly finished cleaning up the northern part of the sea and successfully pushed the front line south. They also made contact with Jinling. The majority of Mara's army in the sea had been driven south, and there was no longer a need to guard the entrance of the storm ocean. The treasured ship immediately set sail again. With the treasured ship as the center, the cultivators of Jinling also drew a line on the surface of the sea that spanned several hundred kilometers and pressed south. This time, Lu Ping voiced his doubts. "To Azuras, this matter is indeed fishy. If Martial Nephew hadn't arrived in time and used a tyrannical method to kill one of them, I'm afraid that even if our sect was able to defend the entrance to the Sea of Storms, we would have to pay a great price." Jiang Tianlin seemed to have expected Lu Ping's doubts. He smiled and explained, "Speaking of which, this is the trouble caused by your martial uncle Tianfeng. When the treasured ship left the entrance of the storm ocean, it dispersed a group of Mara's troops that were guarding the entrance. Your martial uncle Tianfeng volunteered to chase after this group of Mara to investigate. We had just entered the Sky Profound Sect Sea region and did not understand the situation. We needed someone to investigate the situation in the nearby sea region. Unexpectedly, when he chased after a small deserted island several hundred kilometers away, 2 Azuras and thousands of Mara's army suddenly gathered near the island. Then, this group of Mara's army chased after him and killed their way to the entrance of the storm ocean. Lu Ping said thoughtfully, "A deserted island? Martial uncle, why don't we go there and take a look?" Chapter 1420. The treasure ship broke through the surface of the sea, and under the guidance of Liang Tianfeng, it sailed quickly south on the sea. When planning with the Tianqian sect to drive away Mara's army, Jinling was responsible for cutting off the escape route of Mara's army at the entrance of the Ocean of Storms. After persisting until they met up with the Tianqian sect cultivators, the two sides would pull a giant net over the vast sea 3,000 miles outside the Tianqian sect and drive the fleeing Mara south from the north to the south. Jinling was responsible for the sea area 800 miles west of the Tianqian sect. In order to prevent Mara's army from jumping over this line of defense, Jinling's dozen or so Dharma adepts, other than Lu Ping, Jiang Tianlin, and Liang Tianfeng, who led the way, stayed on the treasure ship. The rest of the Dharma adepts of Jinling led the disciples of their sects to travel side by side with the treasure ship and the Tianqian sect cultivators, driving Mara south from the sea. In the treasure cabin, when there were no enemies, Jiang Tianlin would let the treasure ship's spirit, Ruyu, control the ship, while the three of them sat casually in the treasure cabin. Jiang Tianlin activated the abundant void mirror, and the mirror immediately showed the situation of the sea in front of the treasure ship as it sailed. It's in this direction. 300 miles south of this coral reef island is the location of the deserted island. That was where we encountered Mara's army that was gathering. There were two Azuras. If the old man had been one step slower, he would have lost his life. Liang Tianfeng obviously still had some lingering fears. Jiang Tianlin asked Lu Ping, "Nephew Lu, do you suspect that there's something strange about this island?" Lu Ping smiled and said, "I hope there's something strange about it. We all know that Mara never stays in one place for too long, unless there's something in this place that attracts Mara. This has also become a very popular saying in the cultivation world. Mara never stays in a place without treasures. If this is really a place where Mara's army has gathered, then this island is very worth exploring." Jiang Tianlin pondered for a moment and said, "Just in case, inform everyone to return to the treasure ship and focus on figuring out what's strange about this island." After saying that, Jiang Tianlin turned to the treasure cabin and said, "See if Xianwei has followed us out to the sea. If not, call him here." As the only mind seeker in Jinling, Wise Master Xuanwei's status had risen. Especially after the dispute with Tian Shu Laozu, Wise Master Xianwei had received a lot of support from the sect. However, this time, he was also sent to Midland for the treasure ship's westward journey. After the treasure ship docked, Wise Master Xianwei would head to Yingshan Courtyard. After that, he would secretly search for mineral veins in the Hebei cultivation world with the identity of a wandering cultivator. One reason was to expand the cultivation resources and relieve Jinling's increasing pressure on cultivation resources. The second reason was to train and perfect his Mindseeker secret technique and improve his Mindseeker standard. No matter what was on the deserted island, once the cultivators in Jinling had chased away Mara from the nearby sea, they would need Wise Master Xianwei to go to the island to explore. When the treasure ship was about 200 miles away from the deserted island, 4 of the Dharma adepts who were patrolling the surrounding sea had already led their teams back. The remaining 6 were still maintaining the line of defense and imitating Mara's team to take the opportunity to escape to the north. When the treasure ship was only 150 miles away from the deserted island, Lu Ping seemed to feel something strange in the sea in front of him. He stood up and walked to the deck of the treasure ship. Jiang Tianlin seemed to feel something too. However, at this time, he needed to guard the treasure cabin and control the treasure ship to prevent any unpredictable dangers from happening. The treasure ship advanced another 50 miles. On the calm sea, they could even see the deserted island that Liang Tianfeng had seen before. Lu Ping's expression was slightly solemn. With a flip of his hand, the 9-dragon bell landed in his palm. Then, he threw it gently, and 8 small bells separated from the 9-dragon bell. Each small bell had a dragon circling around it. The dragon-shaped statue scurried around the 9 small bells and said with dissatisfaction, "Is there a need to be so nervous? You actually need me to make a move?" Lu Ping waved his hand in the air, and the dragon-shaped statue immediately stopped talking. The 8 small bells gradually grew into 3-foot-long bronze bells. Then, they automatically flew to the front, back, left, and right of the treasure ship, as well as the mast. Each place had a hook specially reserved for the 9-dragon bell. The 8 bronze bells were hung on them, leaving only the bronze bell with the dragon-shaped statue floating in front of Lu Ping. The treasure ship broke through the waves at an extremely fast speed. Standing at the bow of the ship, one could feel the strong sea breeze. However, the 8 hanging bronze bells did not move at all in the sea breeze. The treasure ship was still 50 miles away from the deserted island. All kinds of seals and runes on the body of the treasure ship lit up one by one. Then, With a buzzing sound, the entire treasure ship was instantly enveloped by a protective array. The atmosphere on the treasure ship suddenly became tense. The Jinling disciples on the treasure ship all performed their duties and prepared for any changes. At this time, Lu Ping smiled at the dragon-shaped statue and said, "I'll let you see a big scene." What? Before the dragon-shaped statue could react, it saw that a drumstick had appeared in Lu Ping's hand. Impressively, it was also a transcendent artifact. The dragon-shaped statue was shocked and said, "What are you doing? That's a drumstick, not a bell hammer." Hey. Lu Ping used the drumstick in his hand to strike a 9-dragon bell. The other 8 bronze bells on the treasure ship responded one after another as if they were telepathic. Thus, the treasure ship rang out 9 times in a row. Clang, clang, clang. The 9 bell rings rang out one after another, and the originally calm sea in front of the treasure ship suddenly became turbulent. Then, blood-curdling screams came from the sea in the distance. Countless Mara broke out of the water and went crazy under the ringing of the 9-dragon bell of the Great Tao. They scurried on the surface of the sea like headless flies, causing the entire sea to churn. Countless huge waves and undercurrents wreaked havoc in the 50 miles ahead of them. There were even many Mara that started killing each other in the chaos. Is Mara's army going to ambush us in this area of the sea? Liang Tianfeng had unknowingly appeared behind Lu Ping, and he was also shocked by the scene of demons dancing in front of him. If the treasured ship were to really sail into the ambush area of the Devil Luo army at this moment, under the sudden attack of the Devil Luo army, even if the people of Jinling's sect could protect the treasured ship, they would still suffer a great loss. They're just some small fries. Mara's real trump card can't be affected too much by the 9-dragon bell. Those high-level Mara that haven't appeared yet are the ones that can really cause damage to the treasure ship. The 9-dragon bell can only make Mara's ambush fail. The remaining ones are the tough ones. Let's prepare for a tough battle. This deserted island is really strange. However, the 9-dragon bell's random hammering is probably enough to make this group of Mara suffer. It seems that the big Mara below the blood Mara have all fallen into chaos. The little Mara is nowhere to be seen. I'm afraid that they've already been killed under the sea. This is much more powerful than Senior Xiang Lu's sea bell. Lu Ping shook his head and said with a serious expression, "The 9-dragon bell is a big formation formed by the 9 bronze bells. Its power is not much different from the sea bell. After all, the 9-dragon bell is not a real spirit treasure. However, when the 9 bells work together, the range of their remarkable power far exceeds that of the sea bell. That's why the scene before us is like this. If it was the sea bell in a specific area, I'm afraid that once the bell rings, even half of the big Mara will be killed." The 4 Dharma adepts who returned to the treasure ship were Tianfeng, Tianqing, Tianshan, and Tianyuan, the 4 mid-Dharma adepts. Seeing the scene in front of them, they did not need Lu Ping to say anything more. They were already prepared for a big battle. Just as Lu Ping finished speaking, a loud roar suddenly came from the deserted island 50 miles away. The sound waves were so loud that even the clouds floating in the sky were affected and were instantly shattered. The chaotic scene on the sea suddenly stopped. The roar seemed to have a magical power that instantly soothed the pain caused by the damage done to the Mara army by the 9-dragon bell. A black cloud rose from the deserted island and rolled in the direction of the treasure ship. Lu Ping exclaimed, "This is troublesome. There's actually a sky fiend on this deserted island." The appearance of the sky fiend not only surprised Lu Ping, but it also caused Jinling to fall into a panic. Although Jiang Tianlin was in the treasure cabin, the situation around the treasure ship was clearly shown on the Yingshu mirror. Should we retreat first? Jiang Tianlin was still calm. Even if the sky fiend appeared, the power of the treasure ship would be able to completely resist it. At the very least, they could retreat safely. At this time, Jinling would not have to fight to the death in order to block the entrance of the ocean of storms like before. Although once Jinling retreated, the plan of the 4 sects to chase Mara out on the sea would most likely fail. The appearance of the Sky Fiend was also clearly beyond everyone's expectations. No one would blame Jinling for this. Lu Ping's eyes flashed as he stared at the black fog of the Sky Fiend that was getting closer and closer. He gritted his teeth and said, "There's no hurry. If we fight like this without fighting, wouldn't it make the sects of the Central Plains look down on the sects of the North Sea? Uncle Masters, guard the treasure ship with your lives. I will go and meet this sky fiend first." Liang Tianfeng said, "Are you confident? Now is not the time to show off. Why don't we retreat first and inform the heavenly profound sect of the situation here? The pure Yang Laozu of the heavenly profound sect and the heavenly moon sect will come to deal with it. We can also temporarily stabilize the line of defense and stop Mara from escaping to the north." Lu Ping pointed to the deserted island in the distance and said, "Uncle Master, that deserted island is not only a gathering place for Mara, but also an existence like the Sky Fiend. What do you think is on that island? Mara will not land in a place without treasures, let alone a Sky Fiend. If we wait for Qifan and Full Moon to come, some of the treasures on the island may fall into our hands. Wealth comes from danger, so I must give it a try no matter what." Liang Tianfeng still wanted to persuade him, but Lu Ping smiled and said, "Rest assured, Uncle Master. Even if I am not a match for the Sky Fiend, I am confident that I can escape unscathed. However, there are still 2 Azuras around the Sky Fiend to protect it, so I will need Uncle Master and the others to restrain it." At this moment, Zhang Tianlin said, "That's good too. Once there is danger, retreat to the treasure ship as soon as possible. When the time comes, you and I will work together. With the treasure ship's sturdiness, even the Sky Fiend can't do anything to us." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.